Chapter 140. Grandmother, you have a pair of eyes that can see through everything. Liszt smiled. The shady dealings between him and Levis were not particularly hidden, and it was not difficult for people to find out. At least the Count knew about their slave trading plan. As long as the Count wanted to know about Coral Island, he could find out at any time. Elvira looked at the increasingly outstanding list and was very dissatisfied. List, the flower caravan seafood business has reached my Falcon Town. Then I must congratulate Big Sister. The citizens of Falcon Town will be able to eat delicious seafood. I will organize my people to fish for seafood. Although you and Levis have monopolized the seafood market, the other lords will also organize their people to fish for seafood. Your good business will not last long. Liszt sat in a chair, not minding Elvira's provocation. The seaside towns, of course, can fish for seafood on their own. They have the right to do so. But Coral Island is so big, not every town is next to the sea, and not every beach is rich in seafood. In fact, the flower caravan no longer had to work hard to catch seafood. They directly cooperated with the lord of the seaside town, letting the town lord catch seafood, and then the flower caravan would buy it and sell it to the city. Each town had different seafood specialties. The flower caravan had the most complete variety of seafood, which could be bought at a low price and sold at a high price. When the aristocrats and civilians of Coral Island gradually got used to the seafood on the table, the income had risen from the original estimate of 3 gold coins a day to 4 gold coins a day. Excluding the dividends paid to Levis and the consumption of the caravan, they earned more than 3 gold coins a day. With the seafood market, Liszt was enough to join the ranks of Coral Island's rich. This was a windfall that made people jealous. Elvira was jealous, but she also understood that Liszt had the confidence, he had already fed Levis. On the Coral Island, the words of 2 people were the most useful, the Count and Levis. The Count was Levis's father, so he obviously would not rob his son's business. Levis also got a share and issued a seafood license. Now, no one could snatch away Liszt's windfall profits. She had no choice but to change the topic. Why did you come here so early in the morning? I'm here to bring flowers to Grandma. Liszt smiled and said to his valet, Thomas, go get the potted plants from the carriage. Yes, master. Not long after, Thomas brought in a pot of nightshade. So it's a black nightshade. Madame Penelope suddenly understood. This is the black nightshade I gave you. Did you take good care of it? No, it's not the same one I gave you. Is that black nightshade dead? How pitiful, it still couldn't escape the fate of withering. Grandmother, don't be sad. That black nightshade is still alive and well, and it's very healthy, much healthier than normal black nightshades. What do you mean? Madame Penelope signaled to her servant to put the black nightshade on the balcony. If you have something to say, just say it. Liszt, don't talk to me with such a tone, it reminds me of Melissa. I have convinced myself that you have the shadow of your father, even though you have Melissa's face. Madame Penelope's resentment towards Melissa was still deep. Liszt had no memory of his mother, nor did he know what kind of tone she used when she was alive. However, he could guess that his words were somewhat deliberately mystifying, or perhaps there was a sense of alienation that was not close enough. This was something that couldn't be helped. After all, he wasn't the original Liszt and couldn't invest too much in it. Therefore, he continued to smile. The black nightshade you gave me wasn't sick, it was just gestating a sprite worm. Now, the black nightshade sprite worm has been born. When the news of the sprite worm came out, Madame Penelope and Elvira were taken aback. Madame Penelope was sincerely happy. She had already forgotten her dissatisfaction with Liszt's deliberately mystifying tone and praised her grandson, Knight, Liszt, you are the luckiest one in the tulip family. Take good care of the black nightshade sprite worm, consider it my gift to you. I am very moved by grandmother's gift. For your birthday this year, I will prepare an elaborate gift for you. Liszt expressed seeing that Elvira was about to speak. Liszt, who had no interest in the Chinibu girl, got up. "Grandmother, I have an appointment with Mr. Frank, so I won't be staying here any longer. I hope to have lunch in the castle." "Go, lucky boy, I will have the kitchen make your favorite omelets." "Mr. Frank." "Baron Liszt, you look more mature, but you are still as handsome as before." Frank, whose hairline was almost at the top of his head, had an ugly red nose. "My Shirley has graduated from Oxhorn Academy and returned. As soon as she came back, she said that she wanted to see Big Brother Liszt." "Little Shirley is back?" Liszt thought for a while before remembering that little Shirley was Frank's youngest daughter. In his childhood memories, little Shirley was his little attendant. Because they were only 1 year apart, they could play together. But later, Liszt went to Night Academy, while little Shirley was sent to Oxhorn Academy by Frank, and they never met again. As for Oxhorn Academy, it was located on Iron Hoof Island. Iron Hoof Island was the fief of Marquis Bull. He belonged to the Sapphire Grand Duke, and his ancestor was Sapphire Grand Duke's favorite youngest son. As soon as he came of age, he was conferred the title of Count Bull. After the founding of the country, Iron Hoof Island became his fief and he was promoted to a marquis. Marquis Bull's family established Oxhorn Academy to train maids for the court. Gradually, aristocrats, big and small, sent their daughters to Oxhorn Academy to study. Aristocratic young ladies with Oxhorn Academy education were very popular among aristocratic marriages. Because these young ladies learned etiquette, needlework, housework, music, reading, writing, and so on, they were considered to be cultured. Of course, not all aristocratic young ladies went to Oxhorn Academy to study. Elvira had never gone there. Liszt didn't know if it was a misconception. Liszt always felt that Frank was always talking about little Shirley, as if he was promoting him. "I have probably become a hot young unmarried aristocrat on the island," Liszt thought. However, he didn't have any thoughts about little Shirley. In his memory, little Shirley was a fat girl. After promoting for a while, seeing that Liszt didn't respond enthusiastically, Frank gradually returned to the main topic. "Your officials and servants are taking inventory." 500 serfs were gathered in 2s and 3s on an open space not far from the port. Looking at their appearance, most of them looked sick. Liszt didn't know if they were sick or seasick. Gort and others, along with clerks, counted the number of serfs and calculated the ratio of men to women, as well as the number of craftsmen. After a rough count, they quickly returned to Liszt's side. "Sir, there are a total of 476 serfs." On the side, Frank casually explained, the serfs were transported back from a faraway place, so it was inevitable that some of them would get sick or not acclimatized to the climate. The fleet initially purchased 510 serfs, but lost 34 of them. He sighed in his heart. Liszt nodded in agreement. He knew very well that the sale of serfs was bound to be accompanied by death. Chapter 141. Of the 476 serfs, women accounted for about 2/3. There were also many infants, children, and elderly people. The number of able-bodied men was very small. In the serf trade market, able-bodied men were regarded as excellent labor force and were much more expensive than the elderly, children, and women. In the eyes of a lord, the quality of these serfs was very poor. Apart from craftsmen, women and children were burdens, and craftsmen were also elderly, which was extremely uneconomical. However, Liszt did not complain in his heart. Women could marry the fief's bachelors to offset the imbalance between men and women in the flower town. Children and infants could be candidates for future knight once they were nurtured. Old craftsmen had superb skills and could cultivate a large number of apprentices. Of course, able-bodied men were equally important to the flower town. Whether it was farming, road repair, or dock repair, they all required able-bodied labor. Therefore, on the surface, Liszt still complained, "Mr. Frank, the quality of these serfs is not very good. I need women by name, so a little more is not a problem." However, there are too many children and the craftsmen are all elderly. Aren't you trying to fool me? Oh, Baron Liszt, I dare not fool the Tulip family. Frank laughed. This batch of serfs was gathered by the fleet from the various serf markets. The able-bodied labor force has long been bought by others. You know, without war, there will be no good serfs. So, now that the fleet has set sail again, should be able to buy good serfs, right? The Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom is at war with the Eagle Kingdom. Father and the others have also gone to the battlefield. Frank's eyes moved. You still want to continue the serf trade? Oh, yes, the seafood market has brought you a lot of gold coins. Mr. Frank is well aware of the earnings of the seafood market, isn't it? Liszt did not complain about being poor. After all, the other party had been helping Levis collect dividends. I will gather a sum of gold coins as soon as possible. I hope that the fleet can bring me another batch of serfs. There should be no problem. The Tulip fleet always goes to sea to do business. Now that the war has begun, the serf business is easier to do. So, how many serfs are you going to buy? 1,000, including 200 craftsmen. 1,000 serfs, according to the market price, cost 240 gold coins. In the past, the serf business was not good, so I could accept the higher price. But now, during the war, serfs are still so expensive. I can't accept it, Mr. Frank. Regardless of war or not, the serf business is always full of risks, after a round of bargaining. In the end, the price was set at 210 gold coins. Liszt took out the gold coins that he had saved up during this period of time, as well as the money from moving the caravan, and handed them to Frankel. The smile on Liszt's face was no longer as gentle as before. He would have to live in poverty for a period of time, and the feeling of his empty wallet was unbearable, especially after he had gotten used to spending lavishly. He refused Frank's invitation to have lunch with him on the pretext of "Little Shirley really wants to see you." Instead, he had lunch in Madame Penelope's castle. Lady Mary of Tulip Castle also sent a servant to invite him, but he did not go. He was not familiar with Lady Mary. Ulvera also stayed here. At the table, she kept asking Liszt, "Your flying dust dog has grown so big, give it to me, how much gold coins do you want?" What an international joke. Although Dosen did not release magic, and others did not know its abilities, they could tell that it was extraordinary just by looking at its body. This could not be measured with gold coins. Liszt responded very coldly, "Dear sister, the first person Dosen sees when it opens its eyes is me, and it recognizes no one but me. Even if you use dragon coins, it will not be recognized. Give up this stupid idea." Hearing the word "stupid," Ulvera's face became gloomy. "You are becoming more and more arrogant, you even dare to disobey your sister's words." With a knife in his left hand and a fork in his right, Liszt calmly cut the steak. "I am just telling you a fact, please remain rational." Madame Penelope seemed to appreciate Liszt's current domineering transformation, and she rarely spoke up for him. "Ulvera, please eat like a lady, don't always think about snatching something from Liszt's hands. If you want, you can choose a suitable husband from among so many outstanding nobles, and he can satisfy everything you want. Grandmother, you don't love me at all now. You have all grown up, my little girls, and boys. Grandmother is about to go senile. I only hope that you three siblings can live in harmony, take care of Lytton, and let the bloodline of the Tulip family flourish." The lunch was not very harmonious. After the meal, Ulvera angrily pulled out her sword and stood in front of Liszt. "Fight with me like a warrior, I want to prove that you are still the cowardly Liszt." Not waiting for Liszt to respond, Dosen, who was lying lazily on the side, suddenly broke away from Tom and rushed towards Ulvera. His momentum was like a tiger going down the mountain, roaring in a low voice and stirring up a gust of wind. At that moment, cold sweat instantly dripped from Ulvera's face. She felt herself being shrouded by a strong murderous intent. It was a kind of murderous intent that could only be experienced in the face of an irresistible force and when one's life was at stake. Just like when she was 7 years old, she used a whip to whip a wild horse, and the wild horse fiercely rushed towards her and opened its mouth to bite her. The difference was that she was now an Earth Knight, and similarly powerless to resist. "Come back, Dosen." List gave an indifferent command, and the charging Dosens suddenly braked, no longer rushing forward. But the corium or dog's eyes still flickered with a fierce glint as it fiercely stared at Elvira, as if it would pounce on her at any time and swallow her whole. It is the world of Warcraft of the Thorns Ridge. Although it has recognized me as its master, its ferocity is not that easy to get rid of. Sorry for scaring you, I still have something to do, I have an appointment. Dear sister, let's talk next time. With that, he smiled. Holding Dosen's hand, he left the castle. Elvira's complexion was ashen. She foolishly stood in place and didn't continue to put on a brave front. Just now, when Dosen pounced on her, she was really scared. After all, she was just a flower in a greenhouse. On the castle's balcony, Madame Penelope was watering her new black nightshade with a kettle. No doubt, she clearly saw the scene that happened at the castle's entrance. She just muttered, "That's right. A girl should act like a girl, and a boy should act like a boy. Melissa and Mary, these two bitches, are not lacking in childbearing skills." List didn't fool Vera. He indeed had an appointment, or rather, he needed to find someone. He went straight to a small town near the Coral City. Looking at the dilapidated appearance of the town, he frowned slightly. "Rome, is it here?" "Sir, it's here, Moss Town. I have been to this town before." Rome Winebarrel replied. "Whose fief is this town?" "It used to be a baron's fief. Later, it went bankrupt and was taken back by Sir Count. It has never been given out." Chapter 142. Who are you looking for? The wooden door of the small building opened, and a youngster dressed in black, with messy hair and sunken eyes poked his head out. Looking at the group of people and the huge dog in front of him, he asked cautiously, "Does Mr. Glanny live here?" Thomas stepped forward, maintaining good etiquette, and asked gently, "Our master, the son of the Earl of Coral Island, Baron List Tulip of Flower Town, wants to see him and ask him some questions about magic." "Ah, wait a moment." The youngster froze for a moment before closing the door. A moment later, the door was fully opened, and the youngster revealed his thin, shriveled figure. "Teacher, please go in, the others wait outside." List nodded. "You stay outside." "Sir." Rome wanted to say something. List waved his hand at him. On Coral Island, even the mysterious wizards had to give face to the Tulip family. Entering the small building, a strange smell drilled into his nose. It was not the kind of stench one would find in daily life, but the smell of some kind of chemical. He couldn't help but frown. The room was a bit dark, and he could see all kinds of messy equipment. Some were metal utensils, some were jade and crystal utensils. There were a lot of bottles and jars, and there was even an iron bottle burned with candles, with green juice boiling inside. The strange smell was probably coming from it. The room was very messy, and even the places to walk were not suitable for walking. "Teacher is upstairs, he is waiting for you." The youngster was a bit wooden. He looked at List with only the nervousness of a stranger, not the fear and trepidation of an aristocrat. It was probably because he had followed wizards for too long that he had lost his reverence for aristocrats. An important reason why wizards were unpopular was that this group of people who believed in knowledge disregarded the authority of aristocrats, believing that knowledge was the only truth in the world, rather than the power that aristocrats believed in. The stairs creaked, but as they rose, the light became brighter and brighter. Then, List saw Granny Truth, a magician in his 40s with a hooked nose, blue eyes, and brown hair. He was shrouded in a loose cloak. He was sitting in a chair, reading a book. When he saw List, he closed the book and placed it on the messy desk. List's eyes were very sharp. He could clearly see that the cover of the book was written with the words, "Speculation on the Alchemy of Iron, dedicated to His Excellency the Great Sorcerer Denbaba Truth." There was also a picture drawn at the bottom. It's a triangle with an eye in it. "Baron List, compared to your brother, Viscount Levis, you look more like a graceful noble." Glanny stood up. He was even taller than List. Under the cloak, he was also skinny. His voice was hoarse, as if he had not spoken for a long time. "Mr. Glanny, have you met my brother?" "Of course, I've worked with Viscount Levis a few times." "Please take a seat, I don't pay attention to the hypocritical aristocratic etiquette here." List found a relatively clean stool. Aristocratic etiquette is not hypocrisy, it's cultivation. Granny sneered, "Cultured, are you talking about how to eat humans in a more cultured manner? If you have to understand it that way, it's fine." List was somewhat disgusted by Glanny's attitude. He was used to being respected as a noble, but what the other said was quite reasonable. This world is not a dog-eat-dog world. The environment here is not so good. Of course it can't compare to a castle. I'm just a little mage. My energy and financial resources are all used to explore the truth of the world. Exploring the truth of the world was the slogan of mages. All mages would abandon their secular surnames and uniformly change their surnames to Truth. As for the triangle and eye on the book, it was called the Eye of Truth. Mages found that the triangle was the most stable structure, and the world was also made up of triangles, matter, spirit, and magic. And they were the eyes in the triangle, endlessly exploring all the truth. Can I ask how to release magic? There is no difference between magic and qi. As a knight, why should you care about magic or qi? It's all about the control of magic. Well, let's change the subject. How many mages are there on Coral Island? List asked casually. Apart from a small purpose, he came to visit the mage today because he was curious. Asking Levis is better than asking me. I can only tell you that there are only 3 mages in Coral City who have contacted me. Do you mages not often gather and communicate? The path of exploring the world is lonely. Magic is the embodiment of truth. Only by listening quietly can you understand the knowledge it wants to tell you. List asked a few more questions. Until Glanny became irritated. "Baron List, did you come to visit me just to ask these ignorant questions? If so, please leave immediately and don't waste my time. My time is dedicated to the great truth, not chatting with you. Of course it's not just to ask questions, I also want to cooperate with you. Spit it out." If he had not inquired about Glanny's temper from Gort beforehand, List felt that this disrespectful guy should be dragged out and fed to Dosen. Of course, Dosen might not necessarily eat it. It liked to eat cooked food, or it needed to be barbecued first and sprinkled with cumin. Have you helped Tulip Castle or other aristocrats forge magic equipment? You need me to help you forge magic equipment? Glanny became a little interested and his tone calmed down. There is absolutely no problem with my skills. Even your father has asked me to repair a few pieces of magic equipment. List was also straightforward. He took out a fist-sized black pearl from his bosom and placed it on the table. Do you know what this is? Black pearl, you also have this thing? Have you seen a black pearl? Of course, Levis has also brought black pearls to forge magic equipment. This should be a specialty of your Tulip family, right? Compared to the white pearls of Blue Dragon Island, it has more abundant magic and is calmer. It is a good way to make a fortune. It turns out that the black pearl magic equipment in Levis's hands was also made by you. In that case, I will not beat around the bush. If this black pearl is bigger and has more magic power, can you make it into a magic equipment that can suppress storms on the sea? How big? List was careful and gestured the size of a basketball. This big black pearl, how about it? Glanny frowned and thought for a moment. I need to see the real thing to judge whether it can be forged and enough to suppress storms. But I think as long as the quality is up to standard, the manufacturing process is not a problem. I am a mage with 20 years of practical experience in magic runes and arrays. In magic practice, a magic apprentice was equivalent to a trainee knight, a mage was equivalent to an earth knight, an archmage was equivalent to a sky knight, and a magic shooter was equivalent to a dragon knight. Chapter 143. The real thing is in my castle. After all, it is a valuable item. If you accept the cooperation, you can go to Flower Town. Liszt did not trust wizards. He did not have enough strength. Relying on the name of the Tulip family alone might not be enough to suppress the other party. In case the other party ran away with the Black Pearl, there would be no place to find it. Glanny shook his head. Do you think it is so easy to forge a magic equipment? If your Black Pearl is really big enough and good enough, then you will need more materials to forge it into a suitable magic equipment. In a countryside like Flower Town, you can't even buy the leftover materials. I have 2 caravans. Whatever materials are needed, they can be shipped back in time. Liszt did not mind others looking down on Flower Town as a countryside. With a tiger in his heart, he naturally had a superior mentality. Besides, Mr. Glanny, don't you want to hear what I can pay? Oh, how much are you willing to pay? Levis asked you to forge the Black Pearl magic equipment. How much will you pay? Tell me the truth, I can ask Mr. Frank at any time. Well, aristocrats are really cunning. I can't fool you. Viscount Levis paid 3 gold coins, which is purely for the manual work. He sent the leftover materials. But his Black Pearl is only this big. You have such a big Black Pearl, the price will not be so cheap. In fact, I have no gold coins. No gold coins? Glanny stared. Baron Liszt, are you kidding me? Liszt said lightly, but I have the Black Pearl, don't I? Glanny's eyes quickly lit up. Oh, you are going to use this Black Pearl to pay for it? You think too much. Do you know how much a Black Pearl is worth? This Black Pearl is worth at least 200 gold coins. With so many gold coins, I can hire a great wizard to help me forge a magic equipment. Liszt tossed the Black Pearl in his hand. Of course, it is not very difficult for you to earn it. The Black Pearl was obviously attractive to Glanny. He licked his lips and said, tell me what you want. First, help me make a Black Pearl that can suppress storms. You will provide the materials for the edges. Second, teach me magic and provide me with knowledge and books. Third, I have a few crystals. Help me make crystal lamps. The rest, the remaining value of this Black Pearl, will be my financial support for your search for the truth. For Liszt, the value of the Black Pearl itself was not high. On the Coral Island, apart from Levis, no one was willing to buy it. You want to learn magic? Glanny was a little surprised. This is not the style of you nobles. Moreover, magic and battle aura repel each other, yet you want to give up your noble status and become a magician? Qi refines one's own mana, while magic absorbs mana from the outside world. Although they were both magic powers, they would repel each other in terms of cultivation. It was not that no nobles had ever tried to cultivate magic, but it was very difficult to succeed. This was just like how magic required the mind to maintain rationality and clarity at all times, but Do Qi required the mind to be hot-blooded. If one practiced both magic and martial arts, they would have a split personality. Liszt said, I just want to understand the principles of magic release. As the soul of a modern civilization with scientific literacy in the 21st century, he naturally had a strong desire to learn about this different world full of magic power. He had already come into contact with and cultivated Qi, and his understanding of Qi was quite profound. However, he knew nothing about magic. Getting close to magicians and understanding magic was what he had always wanted to do. The construction of his territory was on the right track, and he had the strength to protect himself. He could learn more about the outside world according to his own ideas. It seems that you are an aristocrat with exuberant curiosity. In that case, I will accept this black pearl. Glanny thought for a moment and agreed. I hope you will have a good time in the flower town. Oh, by the way, there is a house for you to live in the flower town. You can transport the materials and equipment you need to the flower town through the flower caravan. I don't intend to stay in the countryside for long. I will come back after I have forged the magic equipment and taught you what magic is. The moss town is only a quarter of an hour away from the coral city. The prosperity of the city is so lingering. He went to the window and looked in the direction of the coral city in the distance. In his eyes, a city piled with feces was a symbol of prosperity. With a glance, he saw a group of people waiting outside the small building, as well as the huge docen. Is that your pet? A World of Warcraft flying dust dog? Why is it so big? In my memory, no flying dust dog can grow so big. Because it eats well. Magician Glanny Truth needed time to prepare before he could rush to the flower town. List returned with his people first. Meanwhile, in the direction of the coral city near the tulip castle, in a small two-story house with a garden, Frank had just finished his afternoon nap. He went downstairs to the living room and sat down on a chair. The servant immediately served tea. He was an aristocrat, a lord knight, and had his own fief, a small village. Compared to a bankrupt and destitute noble like Gort, his fief was still considered wealthy. Every year, it brought him a surplus of a dozen or so gold coins. Coupled with his salary as Levis's tutor, he lived a happy life. Madam and young lady have yet to return from their stroll in the sea of flowers. They have returned and are enjoying the shade in the small garden. After a while, his wife and daughter returned to the house. Frank, are you awake? The middle-aged woman wore a fashionable round skirt. Despite the heavy makeup, it still could not change the fact that she was gradually aging. Are you going to do something for the tulip castle in the afternoon? Shirley wants you to accompany her back to the manor. She left her clothes in the cupboard. Frank looked at his daughter. I remember that you brought a lot of clothes, plus the clothes you bought on the Iron Hoof Island. Isn't that enough? But I forgot to bring a black gown. I like it very much, Dad. Shirley swayed her thin waist. Have the servant go back and get it, I don't have time, dear. Frank spread his hands, explaining to both his daughter and his wife, Levis is still on the battlefield. I need to be in charge of the properties under his name. I also need to be in charge of the part of the authority given to him by the Count to govern the Coral Island. I understand, now is a good opportunity for you to show your abilities, but I hope you can also take some time to care more about Shirley. She is already 15 years old. 15 years old meant that she had reached the age of socializing. Aristocratic girls were about to get married at the age of 16 or 17. Frank looked at his increasingly beautiful daughter and was very pleased. Of course I know that Shirley is already a big girl. In fact, I was worried about her this morning. On the Coral Island, there are not many aristocrats suitable for Shirley. I hope she can get the best happiness. His wife suddenly became interested. What are you worried about? Who are you looking for her? Shirley also looked at her father expectantly. As an aristocratic lady, socializing was a necessary skill to learn, and there was no need to be shy when talking about marriage. Chapter 144. List. Frank uttered the name, Flower Town Baron, Sir Count's third child. Surely, you must still have an impression of him. You always played behind him when you were a child. Is it Brother List? Of course I remember him. Shirley blinked her eyes, and a slightly childish handsome face appeared in her mind. List was very handsome since he was a child. However, she had already left the Coral Island and went to the Oxhorn College to study for a few years. Due to the inconvenience of traveling by ship, she did not return home even during New Year's Day. Her impression of List had gradually faded. At that time, she had not yet reached the age of admiring the opposite sex. Naturally, she did not have a clear memory of a certain companion. "What do you think of Liszt?" asked Frank. Shirley shook her head. "Dad, I have only seen Big Brother Liszt when he was 12 years old. At that time, he was just a child. Now that he is an adult, I have no idea what he has become. You should find an opportunity to meet him." At this time, Frank's wife asked, "Sir Count does not seem to value Liszt. His fief has been moved to the most remote flower town. Liszt is indeed not valued by Sir Count. Sir Count relied on his determination to forge ahead and establish the Coral Island. He hopes that his children can move forward bravely," said Frank, "but in any case, he is of the Tulip family's bloodline and was enfeoffed upon reaching adulthood. This is not a treatment that an ordinary aristocrat's second son can enjoy. The Count is just Sir Count's benevolence. He is a dutiful father. Even Elvira was enfeoffed by Baron Liszt," said the wife enviously. Elvira was very influential among the Coral Islands' aristocratic ladies. She was a hereditary dame, which was rare even in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The reason why Sir Count does not value Liszt is that Liszt is not talented and has a soft personality. But from my recent contact, Liszt has been reborn. He is calm and dignified. He is becoming more and more mature. Sir Count even went to the flower town to celebrate the Going Out to the Sea festival, which is a sign." "What sign? What other sign could it be? The sons have regained their father's trust. The Count is still in the prime of his life. Of course he wants to be with his sons and obtain more glory as a knight." "Is that so? But he hasn't gone to the battlefield. Levis has. It's only a matter of time. He has the blood of the Tulip family and the Taro family in him." Frank felt that his wife had the narrow-mindedness of a small noble in the countryside, so he told his daughter directly, "Surely, Liszt has already prepared his own night squad. He bought a batch of equipment for the night squad from Tulip Castle." No compliment was as convincing as action. A country lord with a squad of night was naturally not ordinary. Shirley's eyes lit up. "Dad, Mom, when can I see Brother Liszt? I think I have the ability to judge for myself. Our Shirley is smart and beautiful. Of course, she has her own vision. Daddy will find opportunities for you soon." His footsteps were unsteady. He was tired and hungry. Ivan wiped off the sweat on his forehead and looked at his peers with numb eyes, who also had the same numb eyes. Their clothes were dirty and smelly, their hair was a mess, and the dust on their faces could not hide their paleness and sallow color. It was hard to distinguish between men and women, old and young. Even the cries of the babies were weak. "Hurry up, if you don't want to be whipped, cheer up and keep up with the team." The clerk holding the whip shouted loudly. From time to time, the whip would be lashed in the air, making crackling sounds. Ivan's whole body trembled. His slightly dizzy head suddenly sobered up, and his heavy footsteps could not help but quicken. Just a moment ago, the person next to him was whipped by the clerk. His clothes were torn, and he was in so much pain that he cried. Crack! There was another crack of the whip. Ivan lowered his head and clenched his teeth so that he could move faster. He was very afraid of the whip. When he was on the ship, his companion from the same town, who slept in the same corner as him, was whipped to death by the ship's first mate. The wailing before death had made him have nightmares for several nights. Inside the dream was a nightmare. In reality, it was also a nightmare. He missed the days of hard farming on the island, although there was not enough to eat, and there were night-whipping serfs who could not pay taxes. But most of the time, he was free to walk around and chat with others. He even went to the town to take a look at the beautiful proprietress of the bakery. However, one day, everything changed. He heard the knight shouting and killing, and then a group of blood-stained knights came to his village and drove them away. Some people did not want to go and were killed, those who did not want to be killed could only follow them. It was on this day that he left his homeland and began a constant nightmare. He was taken to a market, where serfs like him were being sold. He was locked in a cage, eating some rotten black bread, muddle-headed. Serfs around him were constantly taken away, and new serfs were constantly locked in. Then, he was also taken away. He followed a group of strangers onto a big ship. He could not understand the people on the ship, and did not dare to speak to them. Unexpectedly, there was a person on the ship who knew him. They were from the same town. "It's the Sapphire people," his companion told him. He instantly thought of the legend of the barbarians. Every year, there would be sea barbarians who came to the Eagle Kingdom to burn, kill, and loot. They were all from the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The Sapphire people were on the ship, and we were sold to the barbarians. The ones who caught us were mercenaries, they were more hateful than rats. His companion said resentfully, "I swear. One day, I will come back, find these mercenaries, and kill them all." Ivan did not answer. He was frightened by his companion's words. He had been farming since he was a child, and he had never killed a chicken, because there were no chickens at home, only the nobles killed serfs, and serfs did not dare to kill people. Unfortunately, his companion was whipped to death soon after he made the oath. Ivan had no one to talk to, and continued to have nightmares that he could not wake up from. He had never been on a ship, and he almost fainted. Today, a few days later, he finally set foot on land, and came to a completely strange place. He could not understand a word spoken by the people here. He also did not know where he was being driven to. He was confused about tomorrow. He did not know what he was persevering for, and he did not even know what perseverance was. He just followed the whip and went wherever he went. He never thought about death, and he did not know what joy there was in life. He did not know how many times his legs had become numb. He heard the clerk brandishing his whip and shouting something. He could not understand, but the team slowly stopped. When others stopped, he also stopped. Finally, he could rest his legs for a while. He saw others start to sit down. He followed and sat down again. No one spoke. Everyone on the ship was forbidden to communicate, and now they were used to silence. He looked up and his eyes fell on a female serf not far in front of him. She was preparing to feed the child. She lifted her ragged clothes, exposed her shriveled chest, and stuffed it into the baby's mouth. The baby sucked hard, not knowing if he could suck a little milk. If it was in the past, Ivan would have swallowed his saliva and greedily peeped at the woman's chest. He was still young and had never touched a woman's hand, let alone her bulging chest. But at the moment, the chest was unattractive, and he did not have the slightest thought to think about it. His stomach was so hungry that his intestines were about to be mixed together. The sun moved overhead, and it was noon. P.S. Follow the official WeChat account Lamakes666. Chapter 145. Ivan sat on the ground, and soon learned to lie down on the ground, resting as much as possible and recovering a little strength. He didn't know where he was going and how long he had to walk. Every sound, every sound. There was the sound of wheels turning. Ivan didn't get up, but slowly turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound in the most effortless way. He saw a convoy of carriages with a flag embroidered with purple-black flowers on a blue background. He recognized this flag, which was used to indicate aristocratic status. Of course, he didn't know which aristocratic family this flag belonged to. Just as he was looking at the carriages without any thoughts, the familiar sound of the whip rang out again. As if there were springs installed in his body, he subconsciously got up from the ground and stood properly. Not only him, but everyone else did the same, getting up from the ground and standing properly shakily. The scribe raised his whip, and shouted something in a loud voice. Ivan didn't understand. However, they soon understood. Someone used the wind language of the Eagle Kingdom and shouted loudly, "Everyone, line up. Follow the instructions of the clerks. Line up behind each carriage. Don't talk, don't move, stand properly. Ivan began to panic a little. He didn't know how to stand in a line, and had never stood in a line before. Seeing others move, he also moved. Then he was kicked in the buttocks. A clerk scolded him in words he didn't understand. It seemed that he found the confusion on his face. The clerk pulled him over, stuffed him behind a serf, and scolded him again. Then he went to pull the second serf. The messy procession was quickly arranged into 6 crooked groups under the arrangement of the clerks. The sapphire man who knew wind language walked to the front of the line, talked with several people who looked aristocratic for a moment, and then faced the many serfs. You have 2 meals a day, traveled thousands of miles to Coral Island, and are about to go to the place where you will live in the future, Flower Town. Ivan, like the others, looked numbly at the speaker and didn't respond. The speaker continued, "The lord of the Flower Town, Sir Baron List of the mighty Tulip family's bloodline, is also your master from now on. Remember the place where you will live from now on, the Flower Town. Remember your future master, List Tulip, the descendant of the mighty Tulip family." The last few words were shouted out in a very imposing manner. However, the serfs below remained calm. The speaker didn't care at all. He waved his arms, his grizzled hair disheveled in the wind. "Remember, from now on, you need to speak the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Of course, you are just a group of serfs. No one cares if you can speak Serpentines or not. However, you need to remember the words Flower Town, Tulip, and Sir Lord. Now, repeat these 3 phrases after me." He shouted, "Say these 3 words correctly, and you'll enjoy a wonderful lunch, understand?" Lunch, in an instant, stirred up the silent and numb team. The hungry serfs couldn't stand the excitement of lunch. On the ship, they only ate 2 meals a day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and then lay still. A courageous serf trembled and responded, "Understood, sir." "Very well, now, repeat after me, Flower Town, Flower Town." Louder, Flower Town. Flower Town. Ivan felt that he was so hungry that he couldn't speak, but for the sake of the upcoming lunch, he still stirred up the little strength left in his body and shouted along with the others, "Flower Town." The word was not a mouthful. It was easy to learn. After shouting it a few times, he was even a little excited that he had learned a foreign language. "Very well, it seems that you have mastered the word Flower Town. Next, repeat after me, Tulip, Tulip." "Tulip, fool, don't tilt your tongue, repeat again, Tulip, Tulip." Louder, Tulip. Tulip. Although it is not standard, remember it, here, everything on this land belongs to the Tulip family. Your lord is of the bloodline of the Tulip family. The person who could speak wind language continued to teach. "Next, you need to understand how to express your loyalty when you meet your lord. You first have to kneel down." Several serfs, as soon as they heard kneeling down, immediately knelt down. The other serfs also knelt down. In an instant, all 6 teams knelt down. The speaker was shocked. He was not Liszt and dared not let the serfs kneel down to him. He quickly dodged. "Fool, I didn't ask you to kneel down now, forget it. You kneel down in front of the black tulip flag on the carriage, as if you saw Sir Lord. Now repeat after me, Sir Lord. Sir Lord." Ivan knelt on the ground and shouted with the crowd, trying to straighten his tongue. After a few times, the person who could speak wind language ran to a nearby row of noblemen and said in Serpentine, "Mr. Gort, is this teaching okay?" Gort, dressed in frac habillé, nodded and said, "That's all for today's pre-lunch teaching. Let the serfs fill their stomachs first. The Flower Town is not a place so poor that they can't even afford to eat. Old Grandette, it's been hard on you. I still need you to translate for the serfs in the future." Old Grandette said with a smile, "It is Old Grandette's honor to serve Sir Lord. Then I will tell them to start eating." Immediately, he faced the serfs who were still kneeling on the ground. "You can get up and continue to stand in your line. Now, lunch will be distributed. One by one, everyone has a share, no looting allowed. Otherwise, the whip of a clerical petty official will not have eyes. Hearing old Grandet's words, the uneasiness of the serfs quickly turned into a pleasant surprise. There was really lunch. Then, as the carriage opened, portions of food that they had never seen before were placed on plates of bread and handed to them. There were no cutlery such as knives and forks, only food and plate of bread. Ivan got his share of food. He recognized plate of bread. He used to use plate of bread. After a certain amount of time, he could cook it and continue to eat it. On the plate of bread, there was half a piece of black bread, and then there were many big and small, round and flat things. He couldn't help but reach out and touch it. It was very hard. But he didn't know how to eat it. Fortunately, he always did what others did. He saw that in addition to eating the black bread, some people had already opened it and eaten the soft things inside. So, he sat on the ground with the plate of bread and took a big bite of the black bread. Then, he imitated others and opened it. It was very easy to open it because it had a crack in it. He could open it with his hands. His nose quickly smelled a very strange fragrance. After swallowing the bread, Ivan saw several people eat it in a row. He plucked up his courage and took a bite. It was very soft and almost melted in his mouth. He didn't know what it tasted like, but he felt it was delicious. He no longer cared about it and focused on eating his share. Perhaps he had been hungry for too long. In just a short while, he had already eaten all the food. When the last shelled thing went down his stomach, it was almost the first time in his life. He felt what it meant to be full. At this moment, old Grandet's shout once again reached Ivan's ears. It seems that you have eaten your fill. What a bunch of lucky fellows. Remember this feeling. From today on, in the flower town, so long as you work hard for the great Sir Lord, you will be able to eat such food every day. Ah! Ivan heard someone exclaim next to him. He was also shocked. He could eat such food every day and eat until he was full. Chapter 146. On the second day after returning to the castle, the 476 serfs camped in the wild for the night arrived at Flower Town. After eating a few full meals, the serfs' complexions were still very poor, but at least in terms of spirit, there was a great improvement. In the afternoon, the sun was setting in the west, and all the serfs lined up on the main road of Flower Town, waiting quietly. Riding on Black Dragon, List, surrounded by the night squad, came to the front of the procession. Thomas held Trembling Woods by the hand and followed his every step. Now, he would bring Trembling Woods along whenever he went out. It was quite an interesting scene of a man taking advantage of a dog's power. "Sir, the quality of this batch of serfs is very poor." Marcus glanced at them and frowned. There are indeed very few able-bodied serfs, but there are a lot of children. They can be trained well and become knight candidates in the future. List said simply. While talking, Gort came over to greet him. "Sir, the serfs have finally arrived at Flower Town, and none of them got lost." "Well done. Forget about the losses at sea. I don't want them to suffer any more losses on Coral Island. So, sir, should we start arranging for them to kneel and pledge their loyalty to you?" "Yes." When serfs saw the Lord, they needed to pledge their loyalty, which was a form of selling themselves as a slave. When old Grandet received Gort's instructions, he immediately faced the serfs and shouted in wind language, "Lowly serfs, the great bloodline of the Tulip family, the Lord of Flower Town, is standing in front of you. Now, kneel and pledge your loyalty to Sir Lord." In an instant, the serfs knelt on the ground and shouted in the newly learned Serpentine, "Sir Lord." It was not neat, but the voice was loud. The shouts of nearly 500 people, even if they were just a group of ragged, tall and short, emaciated, old and weak serfs, still had a bit of momentum. List was already accustomed to such a scene. In the Flower Town, people kowtowing to him happened every day. Therefore, he just looked at the group of serfs with a smile on his face. The serfs kneeling on the ground buried their heads deep in the ground, not daring to look directly at their future master. After a while, Liszt, who had prepared his lines, opened his mouth. "I accept your loyalty. From now on, you have become a part of the Flower Town. Work hard for me, and you will receive my protection and live a stable life." After saying that, he looked at Old Grandette, who acted as the translator. Old Grandette understood and translated. "Sir Lord has accepted your loyalty. Sir Lord has told you that from now on, you will become a part of the Flower Town and work hard for Sir Lord. Then you will get Sir Lord's protection and live a stable life in the Flower Town, understand?" "Understood. Yes. Thank you, my lord. I will work hard." The serfs responded sparsely. Many of them still didn't know what to say and just knelt. Seeing this, Liszt said, "Old Grandette, let them rise." So it was. The short serf reception ceremony came to an end. Liszt didn't stop and returned to the castle. Marcus continued to lead the night squad back to the Thorns Woods to guard the logging team. Gort and the other officials started to get busy. They had to arrange the lives and jobs of the 476 serfs in a short time. Fortunately, many wooden houses had already been built in the fief and the settlements. There were also many wooden houses in the unfinished commercial district, workshop district, and residential district that could provide temporary residences. There was no shortage of food. There might not be much bread and vegetables, but there was enough seafood. Even if there wasn't enough, the oyster settlement's fishermen would have enough to go to the sea a few more times. "We need to complete the distribution of serfs as soon as possible. The autumn harvest is coming," Gort said loudly. "The census of resources has yet to be completed. There are too many serf women, children, and the elderly. The original arrangement plan is no longer suitable. We need to make adjustments." Isaiah responded. Blair watched as the serfs squeezed into the wooden houses and prepared to spend the night. He said with a smile, "Children and breastfeeding women should be put aside for the time being. As for the other serfs who can work, it would be better to send them to the Thorns Ridge to carry timber, carry stones, and be responsible for repairing roads." Gort interrupted, "This is not a responsible distribution plan. What I mean is that we should not make arrangements for the time being. We should wait until the census of resources is completed before making overall arrangements." "Well, this is also a good idea. It is indeed difficult to make arrangements in a short time, but we can't keep them in vain. We can just send them to the logging team." At the banquet, Gort conveyed Blair's suggestion to Liszt. Liszt approved of it and added, "Arrange for craftsmen to do some light work as much as possible. Don't arrange for the weak or sick serfs to do any work. Let them rest well." Among the serfs, he valued craftsmen the most. Craftsmen's skills were the world's technology and an indispensable part of a prosperous fief. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, "You should rest a little later tonight. First, make a list of craftsmen, especially what skills they have mastered. I will have the castle's servants help me record it. I hope to see them tomorrow morning." Nowadays, Liszt's words were law in the Flower Town. The next morning, after he got up and walked the dog, a thick bast paper list was placed on the dining table. After taking a bath and changing into loose clothes, he sat at the dining table, ready to enjoy breakfast. It was time for Carter to order the footman to bring breakfast. A cup of fragrant fresh milk, a pineapple bun and milk-flavored bread, a fried egg, a large piece of fried World of Warcraft meat, a vegetable salad, and a few fruits. This was his standard breakfast. It was worth at least a dozen silver coins, especially the World of Warcraft meat, which was very valuable. But who told him to be rich recently? As the Coral Islands' invisible tycoon, he didn't want to be wronged. It had never been his style to work hard and live simply. If he could enjoy it, then he would. He picked up the milk and took a big gulp. The castle's milk is still better. I feel that the flower town's climate and environment are definitely suitable for raising cows. He licked the milk foam at the corner of his lips and made his own judgment. Sherlock has already bought 3 calves. Now that the pasture is occupied by horses, it is impossible to raise more cows, master. Liszt said firmly, once the Thorns Ridge is developed, the dairy farm will definitely expand, at least double in size. I want to raise more cows. Because the milk tea was getting better and better, he had specially investigated the dairy farm. He didn't find any reason for the improvement in the quality of the milk produced by the cows. At least, it wasn't due to the fact that the cows had entered pregnancy and compared to the milk of the cows outside. He could clearly feel the difference in the taste of the milk. The milk of the Flower Town's dairy farm was not only fragrant, but also more refreshing. Later, Liszt speculated that it might be due to feeding them a new breed of corn grass. As a result, after feeding them separately, he found that it had nothing to do with corn grass. Therefore, he believed that the Flower Town's climate was suitable for raising cows. He took a bite of the pineapple bun. Chapter 147. Outside of farming, commoners with a technical nature were called craftsmen. Commoners among craftsmen, who relied on their skills to run their own shops, could be called craftsmen. Therefore, craftsmen were mostly freedmen, while craftsmen were mostly serfs. According to Liszt's understanding, after a period of development, these people would become bourgeois if they engaged in their own business. However, through his understanding of the society of a different world, it was impossible for craftsmen to evolve into capitalists for the time being, as the aristocracy would not allow it. Take Earth's medieval Europe as a reference. With the progress of the Industrial Revolution, craftsmen who grasped the means of production would either accumulate the means of production and evolve into capitalists, or lose the means of production and be reduced to workers. Here, craftsmen had existed for a long time, and they were still craftsmen. There were no capitalists, and there were no large numbers of workers. No matter how they developed, they were still vassals of the aristocracy. The cultivation of qi and the absolute disparity in individual strength allowed the aristocratic knight to firmly grasp all the power without fear of being revolutionized by the new class. Of course, the development of craftsmen in different countries and different cities was more or less different. There was no fixed division of levels. Liszt summed it up simply. Craftsmen could be roughly divided into 4 levels: master, craftsman, and worker. Master, technician, master. Craftsmen of this level generally lived in big cities. They were freedmen with high status, and had reached the level of lesser aristocracy. For example, architects, shipbuilders, carters, goldsmiths, jewelers, blacksmiths, drillers, and so on were all top craftsmen in their respective industries. Architects were responsible for building castles, large buildings, mage towers, and so on. Shipbuilders were responsible for designing and building ships, carters were responsible for producing carriages, mining carts, and chariots, goldsmiths forged gold, silver, copper, and even dragon coins, jewelers designed precious jewelry, carved crystals, jade, and even gems. Blacksmiths could make all kinds of excellent equipment, and drillers could dig mines. On the Coral Island, there were only architects, shipbuilders, carters, and blacksmiths. There were no goldsmiths, jewelers, or drillers. Craftsmen. Craftsmen of this level were the backbone of craftsmen and also the most basic social class in the various large cities. They filled all walks of life and were the cornerstone of the prosperity of cities and territories. Most of them were free citizens and could choose to run shops or sell their crafts. Stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, cobblers, and tailors were the 5 most basic professions for craftsmen, and also the 5 professions with the largest number of people. Masons build buildings, carpenters make furniture, blacksmiths forge tools, cobblers tan leather goods, and tailors make clothes. In addition, there are also bone craftsmen, paper craftsmen, thick bast paper, locksmiths, shoemakers, cooper craftsmen, crystal craftsmen, jewelers, gem craftsmen, jade craftsmen, soap makers, winemakers, bakers, barbers, cooks, sugar makers, spices makers, and salt makers. Worker. Craftsmen of this level were also the backbone of craftsmen, but they existed on a large scale in the manner of the Lord. Most of them were serfs, almost no different from farmers who worked in the fields. They were only engaged in slightly skilled work. Embroidery workers, spinners, dyers, salt workers, sugar workers, grinders, miners, sailors, boatmen, handymen, and so on were all workers. In addition, merchants such as hotel owners, peddlers, grocery store owners, and horse dealers did not possess craftsmanship, but were responsible for the circulation of craftsmanship. Their status was generally equivalent to that of craftsmen, that is, ordinary free citizens. Finally, family, everyone. At this level, they could not be considered craftsmen, but rather artists. Novelists, bards, pianists, painters, court musicians, sculptors, singers, and so on, most of them belonged to the aristocratic class. They did not have titles to inherit, so they developed their own artistic cells, wandered among the aristocracy, and enjoyed a high quality of life. If one had to continue to define them, a wizard who could make magic equipment and an iron knight who could make a variety of weapons were also considered craftsmen. But they were either outside the system, or they were aristocrats. There are no technicians, and there are very few craftsmen. Most of them are workers. It feels like the money spent is a bit of a waste. Looking at the thick bast paper list in his hand, Liszt thought regretfully. What he wanted was actually craftsmen, but the serfs he bought were basically workers. Obviously, this batch of craftsmen were leftovers from other people, or it could be said that Levis's subordinates were only willing to buy cheap craftsmen. In the serf market, the price of a craftsman was obviously a bit more expensive than a worker, let alone a technician. No one would sell technicians, craftsmen, workers, and farmers at the same price. In any case, with a group of skilled workers, I can barely add a few industries to the flower town. I can make sugar, soap, weave, and even dry salt in seawater, make paper using indigenous methods, or develop other industries. Liszt comforted himself. It could not be considered a comfort. Skilled workers were still very valuable. He asked Thomas to bring a quill, ink, and blank thick bast paper, and he began to write and draw. He was going to calculate how many industries these craftsmen could develop and how many workshops could be added to the town's workshop area. But as he wrote and wrote, he studied from the development of handicrafts to the social system. If I want to, I can become a sociologist. He divided the social system of the other world into categories. The upper class of society, aristocratic lords. The middle and upper class, wizards who pursue the truth, officials without titles, knight, and indispensable artists. The middle and middle class, technicians who master irreplaceable skills, mercenaries who work as knight. The middle and lower class, servants in the castle, craftsmen who produce technology, merchants who circulate goods, workers who work as coolies, and rats who walk in the dark. The bottom class, serfs who farm, beggars who have not even become serfs. It's very clear, it's clear at a glance. He took a big bite of World of Warcraft meat, chewed and swallowed. If I can further elaborate on the responsibilities of each social class in society, as well as the mobility of social classes, I can probably write a great book on sociology and publish it. This was just an idea. He had not yet fallen to the point where he needed to write books to earn a living. That was something only the children of aristocrats would do. Moreover, sociology works could not be sold. To write a book, he had to write a night novel. To slay a dragon, to contract the elf king. It was best to start with a prince in dire straits with a little elf. He would wander the sea and have a romantic night with the singing demon. After a few days of flirting with the noblewomen in the Marquis manor, he would kill an evil dragon alone, or ride a dragon. the little elf would then break through to become an elf king. In the end, the hero saves the beauty and marries the beautiful princess recognized by the unicorn. With these elements, it was basically a best-selling night novel. Those young people who loved fantasy were very willing to buy it. After breakfast. Chapter 148. Glanny Truth's letter was delivered to the castle by the flower caravan's transport team. List delayed his arrival. The materials to forge the Black Pearl magic equipment were lacking, which required some time to prepare. He would probably go to Flower Town in mid-October. What a waste of my time. I should have asked another wizard to visit. List was not very happy when he saw the letter. He felt that the wizard did not give him face. It took more than a week to prepare the materials. List's efficiency was too low. He suspected that the wizard was perfunctory. However, there were not many wizards that he could come into contact with. This kind of creature always lived in seclusion and did not easily come into contact with ordinary people. If List was not a member of the Tulip family, perhaps Glanny would not have met him. Probably the aristocrats would not let the wizards settle in their city. They would always make an explosion from time to scare people. List threw away the letter. List no longer paid attention to when Glanny would come. Currently, the resource census and the logging war were being carried out in Flower Town at the same time. Although Gort worked hard as an advisor, there were still a lot of things that annoyed List. He had his own troubles. Standing in front of the window of the castle, he frowned as he looked at Blessed Curls, whose feet were chained. Squawk! Squawk! Blessed Curls continued to make noises, constantly shaking its wings that were full of feathers. The sapphire pupils turned into a whirlpool. List cast magic eyes. In his eyes, Blessed Curls became a fat bird made of cyan magic. Blessed Curls has already reached the stage of releasing magic. In a few days, I'm afraid that he will be able to release magic on his own without my guidance. Eating too well is also a kind of burden. Should I adjust his diet? This bird's meal is equivalent to 3 tons of food for the servants. Blessed Curls was not big. When nested, it was the size of a dog. But it was still a World of Warcraft, and its appetite was far greater than that of an ordinary bird. It is not worthwhile to feed it like this. If he couldn't find an eagle tamer, Blessed Curls would forever be a wild and untamable monster in World of Warcraft. Its greatest use was to kill it for meat and sell its materials for gold. Shaking his head, List decided not to kill it for the time being. After taking care of it for so long, they were already familiar with each other. No matter how he teased it, Blessed Curls wouldn't bite him. It just dodged because it didn't like people touching it. There is still friendship between us. Life in Flower Town was busy and orderly. Gort presided over the census of resources very quickly. The information was gathered and sent to the castle. Heated discussions began during the banquet. According to Sir's instructions, the serfs in the town will be converted into full-time workers. The farming serfs will receive interest-free loans from the castle. The loans will not go through the hands of the serfs, but will be directly handed to the serfs in the form of farming tools, and the serfs will be instructed in scientific farming. Gort recited the long speech he had written with great emotion. The resource census was a political achievement project that he had presided over, so of course, he was full of passion. At present, the results of the Flower Town's resource census are as follows: Peanut Settlement, 100 mu of peanut field with a peanut sprite worm, 20 mu of corn field, 500 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly weeds, 20 mu of housing area. Shiitake Settlement, 80 mu of shiitake shed, 30 mu of mixed shiitake and flame mushroom greenhouses, 800 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs, 30 mu of housing area. Barley Settlement, 50 mu of barley field, 50 mu of oat field, 150 mu of naked wheat field, 30 mu of corn field, 50 mu of corn field, and a corn sprite worm. 500 mu of uncultivated land, mostly covered with weeds, 1,800 mu of beach, some of which had fragrant coconut trees, and 50 mu of housing area. Wheat settlement, 500 mu of wheat field with a wheat sprite worm, 1 pig farm with 12 fat pigs, 300 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly weeds, 50 mu of housing area. Tomato settlement, 80 mu of tomato field with a tomato sprite worm, 20 mu of vegetable field, 40 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly weeds, 60 mu of housing area. Oyster settlement, 4,600 mu of beach, some of which are fragrant coconut trees and a fragrant coconut sprite worm. Fruit stealing monkey farm, 7 fruit stealing monkeys, 3 of which are pregnant females. Housing area covers 30 mu of land. Dairy farm, 150 mu of alfalfa pasture with 11 cows, 3 of which are pregnant females, 180 mu of thorns forest with a thorn sprite worm, 300 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs, 1,700 mu of beach with some fragrant coconut trees, 15 mu of housing area. Flower farm, 200 mu of tulip field, 15 mu of which are Sundance tulip, 10 mu of which are William I tulip, 20 mu of which are black tulip, and the rest are wasteland, 500 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs and weeds, 20 mu of housing area. Town, 40 mu of commercial area, 80 mu of workshop area, 150 mu of serf residential area, 120 mu of freeman residential area, 80 mu of aristocratic residential area, 10 mu of administrative office area. Most of the land occupied by houses was planned, and the land occupied by houses was very small. Castle, 120 mu of alfalfa pasture with an alfalfa sprite worm, 22 horses, 7 of which are pregnant females, 5 mu of black nightshade field with a black nightshade sprite worm, 20 mu of castle, 400 mu of wasteland to be reclaimed, mostly shrubs and weeds. The town's arable land was about 5,165 mu, the beach was about 8,100 mu, and the buildings were about 775 mu. Including rivers, ponds, and roads, the town had a total of 15,000 mu of land. As for the standard for this mu, list wasn't clear on it, as he lacked comparison. If his body had transmigrated here, he could easily understand the weights and measures here with himself as a reference. Unfortunately, his soul had transmigrated. It didn't matter whether he was a giant or a dwarf compared to his past self, as he was already accustomed to the units of measurement here. The Flower Town has an area of about 15,000 mu, the Thorns Ridge has an area of about 13,000 mu, which adds up to 28,000 mu. This is the area of my territory. Oh, I also have to count the 5,000 mu of beach exposed at low tide, so I have 33,000 mu of land. The town with an area of 33,000 mu was already a relatively large town on the Coral Island. He also took the time to draw a detailed topographic map of the Flower Town. The map was certainly not standard, but the basic framework should be correct. There were mountains and rivers, and the road was clear. His gaze wandered around the map, and soon, he looked at the northern side of the Thorns Ridge. From here, there are only low shrubs, and further out, there are large areas of unreclaimed wasteland. Should I enclose this area as well? After thinking about it, he gave up. Swallowing the Thorns Ridge was already greedy enough, and it was better to make a fortune in silence. Being greedy to swallow another piece of land was likely to backfire and cause the Count and Levis to be unhappy. The wasteland of the Flower Town has not been reclaimed yet, so I should first develop in a low-key manner and steadily. I have a smoke mission, so there is no need to take risks. It is still the same old principle: accumulate food, build high walls, and slowly become king. I am 16 years old this year, so I have set a small goal for myself. When I am 20, I will have my own island. Information about the Black Horse Island emerged in his mind. Chapter 149. Mission completed. Reward: wood variant, fast-growing variety of thorns. The slowly changing smoke in front of List's eyes made him feel at ease. From the start of the World of Warcraft until mid-October, after nearly a month of logging, the logging team finally cut down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge. The once not-so-lush but still verdant forest had completely turned into a barren undulating slope. If there was an environmental protection organization here, they would definitely express a serious protest to List. The destruction of vegetation and soil erosion were crimes against humanity. Unfortunately, this was List's territory, he could do whatever he wanted. Besides, the Coral Island was verdant, what was the big deal about cutting down a few trees? With sprites in this world, there was no need to fear desertification. Moreover, there was no industrial development here. Whether it was the island or the mainland, no matter how barren the land was, at least 70% of the area was covered by forest. At least 95% of the area was covered by vegetation. Whether it was farmland or weeds, there would be no lack of plants. Therefore, List never paid attention to environmental protection. Wood variant? What does that mean? This was the reward of the Thorns Worm Chain mission. Previously, he was rewarded with spiky variant and poisonous variant thorns. Spiky variant and poisonous variant were easy to understand, but now the wood variant was a bit troublesome. Wood variant, does it mean the quality of the wood? His clever brain worked quickly. There are differences between trees. Some trees are suitable for making furniture, but they are outrageously expensive. Some trees are even despised for making paper. Wood variant, fast-growing variety of thorns, does it mean that the wood attribute of thorns has changed? Ordinary thorns, apart from being used as hedges, were not of much use. They could neither blossom nor bear fruit, nor were they very hard. They were of little value. I can't figure it out. I still have to see the real thing, then study the fast-growing wood thorns to determine its value. In the blink of an eye, List had already named the new variety of thorns. At this time, the smoke in front of him changed into a new chapter. Mission: the Flower Town's business district is gradually flourishing, but the workshop area has been idle for a long time. There are not enough workshops to support it. How can craftsmen be wasted on cutting down trees and farming? Please build 3 new workshops to increase the town's prosperity. Reward: Chi bottleneck. List's eyes widened. He saw the strange reward of bottleneck of Chi. However, he wasn't surprised at all, only pleasantly surprised. My first mission reward was the advancement of my Chi, allowing me to smoothly break through from an apprentice knight to an earth knight. This time, it's the Chi bottleneck. Does this mean that I'm about to become an elite earth knight? That must be it. Referring to the basic, intermediate, advanced, and dragon battle Chi divisions, the knight is divided into trainee knight, earth knight, sky knight, and dragon knight. The earth knight could be roughly divided into 2 stages, ordinary earth knight and elite earth knight. The earth knight who had just broken through were all ordinary earth knights. During this period of time, the total amount of Do Chi in their bodies would slowly increase. List was at this stage. He could feel his Chi growing every day. When the total amount of Do Chi reached its peak and no longer increased, it meant that he had reached the level of an elite earth knight. At this stage, it was difficult to increase the total amount of Do Chi by simply relying on training. Many knight were trapped in this stage and could only continue to develop the technical use of Do Chi. As they grew older, around 50 years old, their body functions would decline, and the total amount of Do Chi would gradually decline. They would degenerate from an elite earth knight to an ordinary earth knight. Today, Marcus was approaching 40 years old, and his body functions were still at its peak. In another 10 years, it would probably degenerate, and his strength would be greatly reduced. This was the reason why he was eager to make meritorious service on the battlefield. Meritorious service should be done early, and only when he was old could he enjoy it. Half of the elite earth knight had the same idea as Marcus. Make meritorious service. However, some elite earth knight were not in a hurry to make meritorious service. They hoped to continue to improve their strength, such as Levis and Lvera. However, simply relying on training was not very useful. At this time, a large number of potions were needed to stimulate the body functions and continue to increase the total amount of Do Qi, until the quantitative change caused a qualitative change, and break through to become a Sky Knight. A Sky Knight could easily beat up 100 Earth Knights. If there was a good mount, it would be a killing machine on the battlefield, constantly gaining glory. After this mission is completed, I will officially enter the Elite Earth Knight stage. List still couldn't believe it. Originally, I thought that it would take at least 3 to 5 years of training to enter the Elite Earth Knight sequence. I didn't expect that in just half a year I would complete this process. The more he thought, the more excited he became. It was as if his whole body was emitting the light of a genius. Building 3 new workshops in the workshop area is too simple. Currently, there are 6 workshops in the workshop area: a blacksmith shop, a leathersmith shop, a mill, a carpenter shop, a tailor shop, and a locksmith shop. According to the current number of craftsman serfs, I can build a soap workshop, a wine workshop, and a hooped barrel shop. In the soap workshop, there was a soap maker, Bernal, who came from the small Kerchief Island. Not only could he make soap, but he also took over the soap, pancreas, manufacturing arranged by Liszt. Although he had not yet completed the final soap formula, he had already made a barely usable soap. A soap workshop was his reward. In any case, it was to make money for Liszt. In the brewery, among the craftsmen who also came from the small Kerchief Island, there was a brewer named Frank Distiller's Grains, who could make fruit wine. There were also 2 serfs who could make rice wine and beer. Currently, Liszt had a good relationship with the heir of the Hops family, Aubrey Hops, and they often kept in touch by letter. He was able to obtain relatively cheap hops and brew his own beer. If he didn't seek to make money and just wanted to produce and sell his own beer, then a brewery could barely be maintained. In the hoop barrel shop, among the craftsman serfs he bought, there were quite a few hoop barrel craftsmen, which was a common craft that combined carpentry and blacksmithing. Barrels were indispensable in daily life. Therefore, after the hoop barrel shop was built, sales would not be a problem. Even if there was no task, he would still build the hoop barrel shop. I just don't know if the hoop barrel shop can be considered a workshop. It should be a handicraft workshop, right? Liszt was a little puzzled. He couldn't distinguish between a hoop barrel shop, a tailor shop, and the like. If it doesn't count, then I will build another workshop. Sooner or later, it will have to be built. A peanut processing workshop. Boiled peanuts, spiced peanuts, fried peanuts, salt and pepper peanuts, soy peanuts, peanut butter, anything that can be produced will be produced. The flour town should not directly sell primary agricultural products. The value of primary agricultural products was too low. At the very least, primary agricultural products should be processed before being sold. Chapter 150. At this stage, apart from a few shops opened by freedmen, the flour town's workshops and shops basically had to be opened by Liszt. In any case, there were not many freedmen. Liszt did not mind monopolizing all the industries in the flour town. After all, this was his territory. If he said to build a workshop, then the workshop could be built. But Gort had doubts. Sir, the soap workshop can be handed over to Bernal, the wine workshop can be handed over to Frank, Berdeng, and Huntella, the hoop shop has many hoop craftsmen. What does the peanut processing workshop do, and who do I need to hand it over to? It is to simply process the harvested peanuts. The peanuts can be boiled together with the shell, stir-fried, and sold separately. The peanuts can be sold separately, or made into peanut butter. Perhaps some unique peanut flavors can also be developed. In short, ordinary peanuts have to be made into delicious peanuts. Just like how ordinary bread has to be made into pineapple buns. Who will make the delicious peanuts? Among the serfs I bought, there are some who have served as cooks in foreign castles. My castle does not need so many cooks for the time being, so let these people study how to make delicious peanuts. Remember this, Advisor Gort. Please speak. The price of the agricultural products produced in the flower town is very low and does not have the value to be traded. But after we process them, they can be sold at a good price. We can even buy agricultural products from outside and process them. I hope that the flower town can become a processing center for agricultural products. There were no words like initial processing in the serpentines. Liszt could use the serpentines to form a word with a similar meaning, and then give a little explanation. Gort could understand. This is the same as Tulip Castle rarely selling the whole tulip magic ingredient, but rather making the tulip magic ingredient into a finished magic ingredient, and then selling it, right? You understand correctly. Then I will arrange it now. After Gort left, Liszt also quickly left the castle. He hurried to the thorns worm stalk thicket to look for fast-growing wood thorns. Standing in the thicket, as far as the eye could see, other than the thorny thicket, there was only a barren slope in the distance. The fast-growing poisonous brambles and the fast-growing thorny brambles were separated by people, each occupying a large area. My lord. The two worm protection team members guarding the thorns worm stalk hurriedly stepped forward to greet him. He was a serf from the dairy farm. Due to his strong physique, he was selected by Rome as a worm protection team member and received a well-paid part-time job. Liszt asked, "Did you find any unusual thorns when you were stationed in this bush?" He specifically asked Luomu to instruct the insect protection team here to pay more attention to the growth of the thorns and immediately report any special thorns. The team member hesitated for a moment. "Sir Lord, I don't know if those are unusual thorns." "Oh, what's the situation?" "There was a patch of thorns, they became very thick." "Very thick? Take me there." The insect protection team member quickly brought Liszt to a patch of thick thorns. The color and spikes of the thorns here were just ordinary thorns, but each one was about twice as thick as the average thorns. This was clearly different, and the insect protection team member didn't even know if it was unusual, let alone report it. He was simply a pig with a brain. Of course. Commoners indeed had limited IQ. Liszt expressed his understanding and said, "Cut off these thorns." The insect protection team did not have any iron equipment, only relatively cheap bone weapons. They hurriedly pulled out their bone knives and slashed at the thorns. Small shrubs like thorns were not difficult to cut down, not to mention they were still in their infancy. The insect protection team member was full of confidence, thinking that he could cut off the thorns with a single slash and perform heroically in front of the Sir Lord. However, the awkward thing was that when the bone knife hit the thorn's trunk, it made a crisp, bang, sound and bounced off, leaving only a very shallow mark. The two insect protection team members were a little flustered, waving their bone knives again and slashing vigorously. But every time they slashed at the thorn's trunk, they could only leave shallow marks. After a dozen slashes in a row, they could not cut out a crack the width of a thumb. On the contrary, their bone knives had already collapsed. It was about to break. "Stop, Thomas. Hand them my knight's sword and let them cut with the knight's sword." Liszt's eyes lit up. He roughly understood what kind of mutation the fast-growing wood thorns were. He took the knight's sword. The insect protection team member continued to slash, but still could not cut it quickly. Fortunately, the knight's sword was made of fine steel and was very hard. Relying on constant slashing and grinding bit by bit, they finally cut off the thorns that were as thick as a wrist. Then he chopped off the small branches and chopped them into a bare thorny pole. Panting, they handed it to Liszt. Holding the thorny pole in his hand, Liszt could feel the weight of this wooden pole. Very heavy, very strong, and very hard. If I'm not mistaken, its wood mutation is likely to be in the direction of ironwood. Ironwood, as the name suggests, was wood as hard as steel. Many woods on Earth were known as ironwood. Like iron birch, clam wood, nanmu, and so on, they were even harder than steel. They sank in water, and insects and even nails couldn't penetrate them. Many ships, vehicles, special buildings, and even aerospace parts used ironwood as a material. The current fast-growing wood thorns were not up to the standard of ironwood. However, its fast-growing characteristic determined its value. Even if it was not up to the standard of ironwood, it was still far better than ordinary wood, and was better than steel. According to this quality, the fast-growing wood thorns are simply steel that can grow by itself. It was not that there were no ironwood quality trees in the thorn's ridge, such as rock wood, stone wood, and so on. However, their number was very small, and their growth was slow. It would take hundreds of years for them to mature. The value of fast-growing wood thorns that could mature in a short period of time was so great that even Liszt found it hard to imagine it. The previous mutation of poison and thorns is simply incomparable to the current ironwood. This is the treasure of the thorns, my thorn sprite worm. Good job, I'll give you an extra meal tonight, eat as much jade powder as you want. This was the reward of the thorn sprite worm's chain mission, which was affected by the thorn sprite worm's worm stalk. He increasingly felt that there was a chance of success for the thorn sprite worm to evolve into a thorn's lesser sprite. I've decided. His mood surged, and he could no longer hold back his thoughts. I'll plant fast-growing wood thorns in the 180 mu of shrubbery directly affected by the thorn sprite worm stalk. Ordinary fast-growing thorns, fast-growing poisonous thorns, and fast-growing thorny thorns should either be transplanted elsewhere or cut down. They shouldn't occupy the influence of the thorn sprite worm stalk. Black Dragon galloped. It returned to the castle like the wind. He immediately planned to call the newly appointed administrative officer, Isaiah, to replan the thorn sprite worm stalk shrubs. However, after his brain calmed down, he immediately thought of a key problem. The thorn sprite worm is still accumulating the power to evolve, and the chain mission is not over yet. There should still be room for the fast-growing thorns to mutate. It would be very difficult to produce new mutations if he cut down ordinary fast-growing thorns. Chapter 151. The discovery of fast-growing iron thorns was as important to Flower Town as adding a catalyst to a chemical reaction or injecting an athlete with a stimulant. Although he still had to wait for the thorn sprite worm chain mission to be completed before large-scale planting could begin. But this did not prevent him from bringing back the trunk of the fast-growing iron thorns. At the banquet, he would convene the town's officials to study and explore its use. If it can grow to 2 meters high, then it can be used to build houses. It is much harder than the fir we use. I bet that a house built with it would be safe and sound in a storm. Blair, your consideration is not comprehensive. Wood must not only be strong, but also waterproof, moth-resistant, and rot-resistant. I don't think that my consideration is not comprehensive. You see, the wood is very compact, which is similar to the rock wood cut by the logging team. Rockwood never has worms. Blair retorted. The rockwood he was talking about was a tree called rock tree, which liked to grow in rock crevices. Rockwood was very precious. A 200-year-old rockwood could be sold for 50 silver coins. After cutting down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge, only less than 10 rock trees were found. Among them, only 3 were 200-year-old, while the other 7 were less than 200 years old. Similar to rock wood, there was also stone wood, which was also extremely rare. Gort thought of an idea: we can sink it into the water. If it sinks, it means that it is similar to rock wood. If it doesn't, it means that it is not good enough. That's right, let's give it a try. Thereupon, a servant brought a basin of water. He laboriously removed a section of the trunk and threw it into the basin. The trunk sank directly to the bottom of the basin. Upon seeing this, Blair proudly said, "Look, everyone, I never lie. Fast-growing iron thorns are as good as rock wood." Marcus, who had always been taciturn, also said, "The texture is solid and the trunk is straight." It is suitable for making the spear shaft of a knight's spear. It can also be made into arrow shafts. It should be more suitable than birch. Ordinary knight spear shafts and arrow shafts were made of birch wood. The birch city on the Coral Island specialized in planting birch trees and producing birch wood needed to make weapons. The tulip family also had a birch sprite. If it's really better than white birch, we can supply it to Tulip Castle. I believe the Earl will like better spear shafts and arrow shafts. In particular, it can reproduce quickly. This advantage is simply incredible. A rock tree that has been growing for 200 years is only as thick as a palm. This is just a seedling, but it's already as thick as a wrist. It's like I'm looking at a bush of gold coins. Huh, it's a tree that bears gold coins. Who would have thought that the most useless thorns would become the most useful wood? The banquet was filled with cheers and laughter. Everyone was looking forward to the future of the fast-growing iron thorns. Liszt waited for everyone to finish their discussion. He raised his glass and said in high spirits, "For the time being, we can't be sure that it's a money tree. You can continue to pay attention to it and research it to fully unearth its value. If it really is a money tree, it must be planted on a large scale. It would be best to plant fast-growing iron thorns in areas that cannot be reclaimed in the thorn's ridge." Everyone raised their glasses and shouted, "As you wish, my lord." After the banquet, the slightly tipsy Liszt took a walk in the castle's manor, played with Dosen for a while, and then went back to the study to read. Recently, he was preparing to learn a foreign language, Wind language, the language of the Eagle Kingdom. At present, Flower Town only had old Grandette, who traveled extensively and knew both Serpentine and Wind language. Therefore, he temporarily handed the flower caravan over to Harpagon. Liszt himself returned to Flower Town and served as a translator, coordinating the officials to manage the 476 new serfs, while also taking care of teaching Wind language. Mastering a foreign language was still somewhat useful. However, old Grandette was busy and had no time to teach alone. Therefore, he gave Liszt a notebook from when he was learning Wind language in his early years. This notebook recorded the more everyday Wind language and how to pronounce it in Serpentine. Learning was boring. At first, he felt that it was interesting, but after 2 days, he lost his patience. As he passed by the worm room, he went in and teased his sprite worms. 9 sprite worms were packed in a large box. It was like raising silkworms, but this batch of silkworms were colorful and contending with each other. He reached out and touched them one by one. The appearance of the sprite worms was very smooth and felt good to the touch. Some were lazy and motionless, some were energetic and wandered around, including the thorn sprite worm. The gray-white thorn sprite worm was not beautiful. It was the most inconspicuous among the group of sprite worms. But looking at it now, he felt that this thorn sprite worm was a bit out of the ordinary. This is. The stimulation of alcohol made his brain slightly slow. He paused for a moment, and then suddenly, fat, the thorn sprite worm has become fat. It is obviously bigger than the other sprite worms. This is a sign of evolution. Tulip Castle raised more than 100 sprite worms. He played with sprite worms a lot when he was a child, and even witnessed 2 sprite worms break through into sprites. The biggest change in the sprite worm before the breakthrough was fat. This phenomenon was usually called the fat pupa stage. Unlike butterflies, sprites do not metamorphose, they directly become fat. In the process of becoming fat, the sprite worm will slowly decay and age. If they are unlucky, they will directly die of old age and turn into ashes. If they are lucky, one day, the sprite will burst out of the skin, break out of the pupa, and fly. Fat pupa stage. Liszt was completely sober from the drunkenness. Tension spread all over his body, mixed with apprehension and surprise. The fat pupa stage was certainly a sign of evolution, but it was also a sign of death. The sprite worm would not last too long in this period, at most 1 or 2 months. There was no third option if it did not succeed or die. There is only 1 or 2 months left. I am afraid that the Thorn Sprite Worm chain mission cannot be completed in such a short time. I must help it. The fat Thorn Sprite Worm slithered around in the box without stopping for a moment. From time to time, it raised its head and looked at List with its sesame-like eyes, expressing affection. But at the same time, List could feel that there were bursts of restlessness in its emotions. Perhaps this was its desire and impulse for evolution. It had already influenced 4 kinds of mutated thorns. There was no detailed information to explain the influence of sprite worms on plants, but List was convinced that it was definitely related to the emotions of the sprite worm. During this time, the thorns were very violent and continuously mutated. How can I help it? Provide it with nutrition and fertilize the worm stalk every day? Expand the area of the thorn shrubs? I feel that these are common means to help with evolution. They are effective, but not decisive. The probability of evolution is more about luck. Adequate nutrition, to a large extent, could breed a sprite worm, but adequate nutrition could not guarantee that the sprite worm could break through. After thinking about it, the only thing that could really help the Thorn Sprite Worm was the smoke mission. The Thorn Sprite Worm chain mission must be completed as soon as possible. First of all, the current Chi bottleneck mission must be completed. Starting tomorrow, I will personally supervise the construction of the workshop. He had made up his mind. List put down his nervousness and looked at his sprite worm with a smile, especially the Thorn Sprite Worm. The fateful moment had come. Little guy, come on. As if sensing List's encouragement, the Thorn Sprite Worm raised half of its body, and its sesame eyes looked at List in high spirits. Chapter 152. Sir, why are you in such a hurry to build the 4 workshops? I want to see the results soon. In the open space of the workshop area, List led Dosen to inspect the construction of the workshops. Gort, who presided over the construction, was puzzled. Just this morning, List issued a new order to completely build the 4 workshops within 5 days. For this reason, he had to summon more serfs to participate in the construction. The whole construction site was in full swing. Now that it was autumn, the temperature was gradually not as hot as it was in summer, but they were still sweating when working. Tell the construction workers that as long as the construction is completed within 5 days, their salary will be doubled, and if the construction is completed within 4 days, their salary will be tripled. List didn't care about a few copper coins, he only cared about whether he could complete the task ahead of time. Oh my God, the serfs will go crazy. Gort exclaimed and then spread his hands, but it is impossible to build the workshops in 4 days. Workshops are not wooden houses, they need skilled people to build them. List said indifferently, then make it simple, as long as it can be produced. I don't expect the workshops to bring me much revenue. It's good enough that they can guarantee the supply to the castle. The level of the serfs could not be overestimated. But the serfs' pursuit of money should not be underestimated. If they went crazy, they could work day and night and toss the 4 workshops out. The quality might not be guaranteed, but List did not pursue quality, he only pursued speed. Even if the defective workshops were built, it didn't matter as long as the task was completed. Compared to the evolution of the Thorn Sprite Worm, these were secondary. Gort did not understand List's thoughts, but he was only an advisor, and all the power in the territory was given by List. He could only accept it. I will stimulate these serfs. I can't guarantee 4 days, but within 5 days, there will definitely be 4 workshops appearing in the workshop area. After completing this task, Advisor Gort, I will reward you with a few bottles of gin, which can be purchased directly from Tulip Castle for cellar aging. Oh my God, cellar gin, it's so mouth-watering. I haven't drunk Tulip Castle's cellar gin for several years. I will not sleep or rest for the next few days to supervise the workshop. Please rest assured, sir. He corrected the attitude of the officials and the workers. List then held Dosun's hand and walked back. Halfway there, he simply rode on Dosun's back and treated Dosun as a mount. During this period of time, Dosun's body continued to grow and had already exceeded a ton in weight. In front of Dosun, a tiger could only be regarded as a slightly larger cat. The explosive power contained in his body could tear tigers and leopards apart. Even without using magic, it could stand at the top of the Coral Island's food chain. At first, it was a little unwilling when List rode it, but after being beaten up, it obediently became a mount. Carrying a person on its back didn't affect its movements at all. After arriving at Dosun Avenue, List shouted, "Dosun, multiple rock spikes." Trembling Woods opened his mouth and let out a roar. Following that, 7 thick rock spikes emerged from the section of the road that had been planned and had yet to be constructed. "Good boy." Stroking Dosun's big head, List was very satisfied and continued to issue instructions. "Keep going, Dosun, multiple rock spikes." Pft, pft. Another 6 rock spikes pierced the ground. "Good job, little guy, come, rock spikes." Pft. A single rock spike was thrust out. Dosun could already understand the difference between rock spikes and multiple rock spikes. A piece of jerky as a reward. List rubbed Dosun's chubby neck and continued to train. "Dosun, bigger, bigger, rock spikes." Pft. A rock spike emerged. "Bigger, rock spikes." Pft. Another rock spike popped up. "Not qualified, Dosun, no jerky reward." "Bigger, bigger, you get jerky, understand?" List shook the jerky in front of Dosun, but didn't give it to let it understand that it was not good enough. Bit by bit. When the rock spike became thicker, List stuffed the jerky into its mouth and repeated the instruction, "Bigger, rock spikes," indicating that the bigger the rock spike, the jerky reward. Dosun's IQ was not low, but because of the language barrier, it could only use conditional reflex to let it understand various instructions. This kind of training was repetitive and boring. But when Dosun understood the new instructions, List would feel a sense of accomplishment, and his ultimate goal was to train Dosun to release more types of magic. Dosun is an intermediate World of Warcraft, no doubt, but it is still a little worse than the purple sand crocodile. As an evolved intermediate World of Warcraft, its aptitude is definitely worse than the innate intermediate World of Warcraft. How to make up for it depends on how I, its master, train it and use skills to make up for its talent. List enjoyed personally training the powerful intermediate World of Warcraft. However, the road repair team following behind him was not so happy. With the rise of Dosun's magic power and the mass production of rock spikes, the workload of the road repair team also greatly increased. The hammer kept pounding, smashing the rock spikes and laying them flat on Dosun Avenue. This was a very difficult task because List required that each piece of gravel should not exceed the size of a bottle cap. The serfs responsible for the gravel needed to keep pounding and even smash the stone into powder. Only in this way, the road built would be smooth. Looking at the serfs of the road repair team, sweat mixed with dust dripping down, List felt a little emotional. Compared to them, he was too leisurely. Reincarnation was a technical job, and obviously, his skills were good. Let Mrs. Abby prepare mung bean soup and send it to the serfs of the road repair team, 1 bowl per person. Seeing the butler Carter coming over, List ordered. They will be flattered by your kindness. As long as they work well for me, I will never be stingy with rewards and bestowments. In Flower Town, I hope that everyone can support themselves with work, eat their fill and wear warm clothes. Even if winter comes, they can still live a healthy life. List said dignified words. His vision was advanced. Squeezing the serfs was very low-level exploitation. Only by mobilizing the serfs' enthusiasm for production could they maximize the exploitation of laborers and obtain more surplus value. He was a man who had read Karl Marx's Das Kapital. As for the capitalist's conscience, wasn't mung bean soup delivered, what else could he do? With so many people building a road, the wages were not in arrears and they only worked 12 hours a day, which was already very kind. If it was another lord, perhaps the serfs could only learn from Su Sanduo and pick up stones to build the road without spending a penny. Writing Dosun. Chapter 153. After List left. The serfs who were working hard whispered to each other. Sir Lord's pet is too powerful, I don't even dare to look at it. When it roars, my whole body trembles. A serf looked at the distant figure of the flying dust dog and exclaimed. Of course, the flying dust dog is the king of the Thorns Ridge, only the great Sir Lord can tame it. Yes, his lordship is a noble blessed by the knight's glory. He can subdue any world of Warcraft with a single strike of his sword. This winter, we won't have to worry about World of Warcraft eating people. The Thorns Ridge, I didn't expect us to cut down all the trees in the Thorns Ridge. It's a pity that my family doesn't have enough people and tools. Otherwise, I would have reclaimed 10 more acres of wasteland this year. The town officials said that the more fields we plant, the more food we can save. My son will be of marriageable age next year. I have to prepare food and a house for him, otherwise he won't be able to find a wife. Hey, Old Brown, has your son found a girl who is willing to be with him? Of course, I asked Captain Grandad of the Flower Caravan. He promised me to find a girl who speaks whispery for my son. Oh, right, one with a big butt. They are the new serfs that Sir Lord bought. I heard that they are from the Eagle Kingdom, right? Only the Eagle Kingdom speaks Wind Tongue. However, this is Coral Island. Sir Lord will let them speak Serpentines. By the way, Old Brown, why don't you find one? Among the newly bought serfs, there are several older women who can form a pair with you and help you with housework and work in the fields. Old Brown smiled embarrassedly. Hee, I'm looking for it. The women of the continent can't speak Serpentine. When Old Brown married them, the two of them could only gesture. As long as I'm lying on the bed, it doesn't matter if I can speak or not. It's fine as long as I can move. Ha! Old Brown's good days are here. Praise the Overlord. Praise be to Sir Lord, the flower town is getting better and better. The serfs' thoughts were very simple. Their lives were better than before, and it was all because of the Sir Lord. They had to praise the Sir Lord, farm more, and work more. Walls and cages. After losing her freedom, Stupid Woman lived in this narrow world. From the initial resistance, to the gradual acceptance, now that Dosun had come to visit, it was the happiest and most exciting moment for it. Vaguely, it had grown fond of such peaceful days. Every day, it would eat, sleep, and eat. Occasionally, it would get up to mate and enjoy Dosun's violent thrusts. Woof woof. Dosun's voice came closer and closer. Stupid Woman, who was sleeping on the ground, immediately got up, came to the edge of the cage, and responded with a bark, woof woof. A moment later, the gate of the wall was opened, and the two flying dust dogs met each other. List was still riding on Dosun's back, leisurely approaching the cage, which was within the range of Stupid Woman's magic. Stupid Woman did not release her magic. She had almost forgotten about the rock thorns. The training of its conditioned reflexes was very simple. Release the magic, take the food. After a few days, Stupid Woman had the impression that every time she released her magic, she had to go hungry. If I don't use my magic, the food will appear. So, she no longer released her magic. Beast instinct told her that eating was far more important than magic. However, List dared to approach Stupid Woman with his magic eye. The castle servants who fed Stupid Woman did not dare to come in. They moved the cage and let Dosun enter the cage to meet Stupid Woman. Originally, the mating session should have gone smoothly, but there was a problem. Stupid Woman could accept Dosun's intimacy, but she resisted and forbade Dosun from sprinting. This is... List had a flash of inspiration. Is stupid woman pregnant? Pregnant female beasts would resist mating. Of course, female beasts that were not in heat would also resist mating. It was just that stupid woman should be in heat, and she did not resist mating too much before. In any case, since stupid woman resisted, it meant that she was either out of heat or pregnant, and was no longer suitable for forced mating. Some time ago, Dosen came to mate every day, but he did not make stupid woman pregnant because stupid woman was not in heat. Heat involves ovulation. How could she get pregnant without eggs? Dosen, come out. List knocked on the cage. Dosen did not want to come out. He urged him several times before reluctantly coming out. It seems that I have to go to Coral City to find some female wolfhounds and buy them back. Otherwise, Dosen's exuberant energy will not be able to be released. Blindly holding back without reasonable guidance is not conducive to healthy development. I just don't know if Dosen and the wolfhounds can give birth. Thinking about it this way, he was quite looking forward to it. Maybe it could give birth to a batch of magical beast wolf dogs with the bloodline of magical beasts, just like the fire dragon horse. Trembling Woods is a mid-level magical beast. Its bloodline is even stronger. The magical beast dogs born from its mixed blood will definitely be very strong. If they are selected and raised for a long time, they may become a good breed of hunting dogs or working dogs. If it's really possible, then build a kennel and train a wolf dog army. While he was daydreaming, the servant quickly reported, "Master, the mage of Coral City followed the flower caravan to the castle. Let's go back." List turned around and rode Dosen back to the castle. The flower caravan was unloading the goods and moving them into the castle cellar. Another carriage was parked on Dosen Avenue. A tall, thin man in a black cloak stood in front of the carriage, looking at the town not far away. There was also a thin boy in a cloak beside him. It was the mage Glanny Truth and his magic apprentice. "Mr. Glanny, welcome to Flower Town." Although List was not satisfied with the late mage, he still had a standard aristocratic smile on his face. Glanny lifted the cloak on his head, revealing his messy brown hair. "The road in Flower Town is good." It turned out to be a stone road. I thought it would be a mud road. Baron List, building a stone road costs a lot of gold coins. Even if aristocrats need to be dignified, why waste it on a road? While speaking, his eyes were looking at Dosen. The current Trembling Woods was the focus of attention wherever he went. His huge body and mighty aura were extremely eye-catching. TSK, what a good flying dust dog. It is extraordinary, worthy of being the king of Thorn's Ridge. It is far better than a low-level World of Warcraft. It is your luck to have it. No, it is its luck to follow me. List gestured with his hand. "Let's talk inside the castle. Mr. Carter has prepared tea and drinks." Glanny did not move, still looking straight at Dosen. "Baron List, I wonder if I have the honor to study this flying dust dog? Perhaps I can buy it. You should know that the value of a World of Warcraft lies in what kind of magic equipment it can make." Chapter 154. He wanted to buy Dosen. He wanted to make Dosen into a magic equipment. List felt that he should let go of Dosen's leash and let it teach Glanny how to behave. Intermediate World of Warcraft was not something that a wizard could touch. In the castle's living room, the host and the guest sat down. Perhaps it was the reputation of being a hermit, or perhaps it was because magic was more impressive, but the status of wizards in society was still quite high. They belonged to the upper middle class and were qualified to enter the castle's second floor. "Is this the famous ice cream of Tulip Castle? It is said that it was invented by you?" When the servant brought the ice cream, Glanny was immediately attracted by the different colors of the ice cream. Ice cream was a high-end food. A lot of ice cream was used to make a small amount of ice cream, which ordinary people could not afford. Glanny had only heard of it, but had never tasted it. "Try it." In the entire Coral Island, apart from Flower Town, only Tulip Castle, Falcon Town, Beer Castle, and Gravel Castle can eat this frozen delicacy. Liszt had sold the recipe to 4 people, Levis, Ulvera, Aubrey Wildgrass, and Brandon Gravel. The other aristocrats wanted to buy it, but were reluctant to spend money. Glanny picked up the cup and took a sip. Is this natural ice? It's not made by magic. Interesting. How is it made? The recipe for ice cream is worth a lot. I don't need the recipe for ice cream. I want to know, where does the ice come from? Baron Liszt, don't tell me that your castle is so small that there is an ice cellar underground. Making ice with saltpeter itself was not something worth keeping secret. But the tone of Glanny's question made Liszt uncomfortable, so he responded faintly, Mr. Glanny, I invited you to Flower Town to make equipment for me and teach me magic knowledge, not me to teach you knowledge. I hope you can straighten out your thinking. Glanny scooped a mouthful of ice cream without any self-awareness. It is the nature of us wizards to seek the truth. The weather is still hot, and it is difficult to even cast ice magic, let alone use natural means to make ice. This is a major discovery, I hope you can teach me. Imparting knowledge costs money, Yi Futian said. How much? Glanny's attitude showed that he was willing to buy information with gold coins in order to know how to make ice with saltpeter. Liszt rolled his eyes and an idea popped up. I'm not short of gold coins. If you want to know how I make ice, it's very simple. Work hard for me during this period of time, and after you're done, I'll naturally tell you how to make ice. Glanny frowned. I hate working with doubts. So, under the premise of ensuring quality, finish the work as soon as possible, and you can get rid of your doubts as soon as possible. Liszt said bluntly. He had figured out how to deal with wizards. There was no need to take anything into consideration and just directly berate them. This was the Flower Town, a place where wizards could not raise any waves. Alright, let's talk about work. Where are the black pearls that you need me to forge magic equipment for? Thomas, go get my black pearl. It's in the cabinet in the study. Just now, he went into the study, took out the black pearl the size of a basketball from the gem space, and stuffed it into the cabinet to deceive people. Thomas quickly carried the black pearl over. He put it on the table. This black pearl was not a regular circle. It was a bit crooked and did not look beautiful. But this was Liszt's aesthetic. For Glanny, who had never seen a bigger black pearl, it was perfect. Incredible, incredible, the black pearl is incredible, but there really is such a big black pearl. He rubbed the black pearl with his hand. The abundant water magic makes me feel as if I'm on the sea. It must have been born in the deep sea. Oh, it also has a heavy aura of history. I feel that it has existed for hundreds of years. Do you think it can be made into a magic equipment to suppress storms? Of course, it's better than I thought. It's the best material for making magic equipment, but I'm afraid the materials I brought are not enough. I need to buy more materials. You're leaving? No, there's no need to leave. I'll write a letter and let Charlie buy it. There's just a lack of some auxiliary materials, but there's no shortage of core materials. Charlie was the thin magic apprentice. Glanny was still very nimble. He immediately got a pen and paper and began to write a letter. He wrote to his fellow magician and asked him to help purchase the materials. He then handed the letter to Charlie and told the flower caravan to take Charlie to Coral City. His fellow magician lived near Coral City. Baron Liszt, I need an independent working space. It takes a long time to make magic equipment, especially with such excellent materials. There are many new houses in town. You can choose one. Liszt stood up. I'll take you to town now to choose your room. Glanny didn't bring a horse, and he didn't even know how to ride. So he could only let the servant take him on horseback. They arrived at the town. Glanny's eyes did not stop looking. He saw a large open space, which was planned, including drainage channels, roadsides, and green belts. Although it had not been built, it had been divided into pieces. Some of the houses have been knocked down and replaced by neat rows of new houses. There were not many pedestrians. At this time, most of the farmers were carrying stones at the dock. Only a large number of serfs were busy in the workshop area. Here, there's no feces. He looked for a long time before he was surprised. Flower Town prohibits urination and defecation. There are toilets built here. All residents have to go to the toilet. Gort, who had just arrived, answered, "Mr. Glanny, long time no see. I hope you like Flower Town. The environment here is more beautiful than Coral City. I have to admit that the streets are clean, but compared to the prosperity of Coral City, this place is too remote. It depends on how you define it. There are no brothels, casinos, or taverns in Flower Town. Life is more peaceful. After all, Flower Town is just a small town." Gort shrugged his shoulders. "Get used to its tranquility, and you will definitely fall in love with it. Of course, the idle nights are really hard to bear. Freya was more than 4 months pregnant. She couldn't do that. Gort's nightlife could only be done with his hands. Liszt had to exhort, 'Treat Freya well, Consultant Gort.' If he didn't exhort, maybe this guy would go and hook up with some small-town girl." Gort smiled, "Of course." He walked back and forth in the town. "Glanny didn't choose a house here. My work needs quiet, Baron Liszt. The noise of building a house in a small town is too noisy and not suitable. Please provide me with a more remote house." He liked the bustling city, but his work needed quiet, so he lived in seclusion in the broken moss town. "In that case, Consultant Gort, choose a separate house for Glanny among the new houses in the wheat settlement as his residence and studio." Chapter 155. A carriage of materials and utensils were moved to the new house, and Glanny Truth lived in Flower Town. At lunchtime, Liszt entertained Glanny in the castle. The town's aristocrats and quasi-aristocrats were gathered, but the atmosphere of the banquet was sloppy. The mage was not as unreasonable as Liszt thought. Of course, it was definitely not a lively conversation. Most of the time, it was Gort and the others who were enjoying themselves, while Glanny just ate and drank. He was more like a creature immersed in himself. There were not enough materials to make the black pearl. So after the banquet, starting in the afternoon, Glanny's work was mainly focused on teaching knowledge. He also had the task of making crystal lamps, but that required the cooperation of a crystal craftsman. Mages could not carve crystals. The flower caravan had invited the crystal craftsman, Brad. They would probably be able to invite him tomorrow or the day after if he was not busy. Magic is the same as Do Chi, they are both forms of magic. Glanny did not beat around the bush and directly said, "The world is a triangle, matter is a corner, spirit is a corner, and magic is a corner. This is our understanding of the nature of the world, and it is also the source of magic. Specifically, the caster is the matter, the power of meditation is the spirit, and the combination of matter, spirit, and magic creates magic. So, what about a knight? As I said, magic is the same as chi. It is also magic, the caster, and the power of the spirit, creating a variety of chi secrets. The difference between a mage and a knight is that a knight sees himself as a triangle, while a mage integrates himself into the big triangle of the world." As he spoke, he asked, "Do you understand?" Liszt nodded. Triangles are the most stable structure. In fact, he didn't understand at all. What big triangles and small triangles? Then Glanny continued to talk about his triangle theory. Just like Taoism believes that the universe is divided into the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, Buddhism concludes that matter is divided into earth, water, fire, and wind. Mages believe that the world is divided into three parts: spirit, matter, and magic. It was a very broad understanding, but it was unknown whether it was correct or not. The content was very boring. Glanny was not a good teacher, and his talk was even more boring. The whole afternoon, he repeated the triangle theory over and over again, making List almost fall asleep several times. In the end, he could not help but interrupt, "Mr. Glanny, I already understand the theory of triangles, so I can skip it. What I wanted to know now was how magic was released, and why magic was divided into water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, ice, and darkness. Also, I want to see real magic." Glanny frowned. It is very disappointing to be interrupted in a long speech. Fortunately, he still knew that List was a financial backer, so he raised his left hand, spread his fingers slightly, and quickly rubbed a fireball. Fireballs appeared out of thin air, from small flames to fist-sized fireballs. With a push of his hand, the fireball flew out of the window of the castle and exploded in mid-air not far away. Fireball, the lowest level of fire magic. Play it again. List narrowed his eyes and cast Mana Eye. He wanted to observe carefully. He had observed World of Warcraft's magic. It was a magic that was condensed from the body's mana and released from the mouth. Glanny nodded. He raised his hand and rubbed another fireball. At this moment, List clearly saw that there was only a small amount of magic in Glanny's body. The chaos had no color. When he released the fireball, the magic in his palm quickly turned red and became fire magic. Then the red magic in the air was attracted by the magic in his palm and condensed into a fireball. Bang! The fireball burst outside the castle. In the field of vision of the magic eyes, the fire attribute magic suddenly drifted away, as if it had never appeared. He already knew the process of magic release. However, it was still not clear why it could condense into a fireball. Mana Eye could not see what force caused the magic to condense. Perhaps, as Glanny said, it was the power of the spirit. Just like himself, with a single thought, he could drive the chi in his body and operate it according to his thoughts. As for why it operated according to his thoughts, it was unclear. At this time, Glanny continued to rub his magic. Meditate and build a bridge between your spirit and magic power. His voice was a bit erratic, his eyes stared at his palm, and his whole person fell into a certain state. Magic is a third existence outside of matter and spirit. It has emotions, experience them, be intimate with them, and they can be used by you. Gradually. In his palm, a grayish-brown substance appeared, which was the soil composed of magic. The mud ball gradually grew, and his voice continued to drift. Meditation is a necessary step to build a bridge. Only when the spirit is in a calm state can you touch the existence of magic. They are everywhere, they cheer and jump. As long as you find them and establish friendship with them, you can get magic and then understand the world. Finally, the mud ball expanded to the size of a fist, and then gradually solidified, condensing into a rock with sharp edges and corners. Glanny did not stop and continued to release magic, compressing and solidifying the solidified rock again until the rock made a cracking sound. With a shake of his hand, the rock was completely broken. But unlike the previous fireball, the broken rock did not disappear, but still existed in the form of debris. Flying rock, earth magic, as low level as fireball. However, I can't master it very well. I'm good at water and fire magic, and I'm not proficient enough in wind and earth magic. What about lightning, ice, and darkness? I haven't studied these 4 types of magic, so I can't release them. But I heard that mages can master and release every type of magic. If I get closer to the truth and become a great mage, maybe I can have enough energy to study lightning, ice, and darkness magic. But I'm too far from the truth now, and my spirit is not broad enough. It's already very difficult to be proficient in water and fire magic. What kind of existence is a magic shooter? I don't know. You don't know? Glanny raised his head, his hooked nose pointing to the sky. A magic shooter is the embodiment of truth walking in the secular world, an existence that mages need to look up to. Baron Siggy, why do you think I would understand a magic shooter? Even if it's you, do you know what kind of existence a dragon knight is? List couldn't refute such a rhetorical question. He always thought that a dragon knight was probably a knight riding a dragon. However, the Sky Knight's high-level battle energy was a level above that of a dragon's battle energy, which was said to be shared with a dragon. As for what a dragon's battle energy was, among his relatives and friends, not only did the Count not know, but Marquis Merlin, the veteran Sky Knight, also did not know. All the noble knight had fantasized about becoming a dragon knight. However, a knight with a dragon was a high existence that ordinary people could not come into contact with. Even a king with a dragon, such as Sapphire Grand Duke, probably did not know what it was like to be a dragon knight. The original Sapphire Grand Duke was a dragon knight, but now the Sapphire Grand Duke was just a companion and keeper of the dragon. There was no chance to ride a dragon. Chapter 156. Are you talking about these residues? Glanny poured the rock fragments in his hand onto the table. They are just ordinary stone residues, without the slightest magic power. So, why is that? Why don't magic power condensed rocks disappear? Glanny stirred the fragments on the table with his hand. Your question is too big, just like how dragons can produce gems and metals, and how elves can cultivate plants. It involves the essence of the world, and I can only tell you my understanding. Please speak. Spirit, matter, and magic power are a triangle. Of course, you have said it many times. It is not unchangeable. In other words, spirit and matter can have a dual impact on magic power. Spirit can influence magic power into matter, and matter can influence magic power into spirit. Spellcasters use their own spirit to create magic and form matter. Matter and magic power fuse to form. He paused before saying, dragons and sprites, I think they come from this way. List glanced at Glanny, a little surprised. This statement was quite new. Dragons and energy originated from the combination of magic power and matter. Without waiting for List to ask his doubts, Glanny explained himself, this is just a guess, Baron List, not based on the truth. Therefore, forget it after hearing it. I won't admit that this saying came from me. Mages pursue the truth and abhor lies. List nodded. List did not dwell on it and changed the subject. I have seen the birth of sprite worms many times, but I know nothing about the birth of dragons. Do you know? I do not know about the birth of dragons. I am just a wizard. I have never even seen a dragon. Glanny's tone was not without regret. But I can recommend you a book, The Dragonlance Chronicles, The Dragons of Autumn, written by the great magic shooter Odom Truth. It has a very detailed introduction to dragons. Did you bring this book? No, in fact, I do not have this book. I only read it when I was young, when I was a magic apprentice with my teacher. That was my teacher's book collection. In order to find the truth and obtain more knowledge, he had already traveled to the continent. I have not seen him for many years. Without a book, List could only let Glanny recite the contents of the book for him. Naturally, Glanny wouldn't turn down the opportunity to earn money just by saying a few words. Thus, he began to recite the contents that he had written down. Young dragons that are less than 100 years old are the easiest to capture. It is said that most of the dragon knight's feelings for the dragons are nurtured when they are still young. Adult dragons between 100 and 800 years old are at the peak of producing gemstones and metal ores. Dragon blood, dragon feces, dragon saliva, dragon breath, dragon scales, and draconic might can infect the surroundings and form ores. After 800 years, they would be old dragons. Most of the elderly dragons would leave their homes during this period of time and head for the Dragon Valley, a legendary place. Some say that the Dragon Valley is in the Devil's Sea, some say that it's in the Swirling Sea, and some say that it's in the Muragadan Mountain, but no one has ever seen it. It's a legendary place. Dragons bury themselves in the Dragon Valley. They will not die, they will only merge with the world, and after countless years, they will be reborn as dragons. There were 3 main types of dragons: elemental dragons, gem dragons, and metal dragons. Metal dragons could infect metal ores: gold, silver, copper, iron, and aluminum. There were a total of 23 types of metal dragons recorded in the Dragonlance Chronicles, Dragons of Autumn. Brass dragon, bronze dragon, purple copper dragon, white copper dragon, white mouth iron dragon, mouth iron dragon, gray mouth iron dragon, white heart iron dragon, black heart iron dragon, gold dragon, platinum dragon, silver dragon, mercury dragon. I can roughly remember these metal dragons. Gem dragons could infect gem ores, and they were roughly divided into 4 types: blue, red, yellow, and green. For example, sapphire dragons, ruby dragons, light sapphire dragons, dark red gem dragons, light green gem dragons, and so on. The gems produced by gem dragons all had extraordinary magic, and their value was higher than that of metal dragons, but in terms of production, they were not as high. Most elemental dragons were evil dragons, the incarnation of elements. Fire dragons could infect volcanoes, water dragons could infect swamps, wind dragons stirred up storms, earth dragons raised mountains, and so on. High Mage Odom Truth once fought with a wind dragon, his blood splattered across the plains. Now that place is called the Howling Wind Valley. In the Unsetting Light Empire, strong winds blow all year round and never stop. Countless mages who specialize in the wind element hope to see the Howling Wind Valley and feel the magic engraved by the wind dragon. List was interested. How many years ago did this happen? According to the time of Odom Truth's life, it should be 4,000 years. At that time, there was no Unsetting Light Empire. The founding history of the Unsetting Light Empire was only 3,000 years old. For 4,000 years, the magic of the wind dragon in the Howling Wind Valley has not dissipated? Yes, this is the power of dragons. They have the ability to change the world. Unfortunately, even magic shooters can't see through the mystery. Glanny shook his head, his regret overflowing. List was equally shocked. He had read a lot of night novels that described dragons, and those were obviously made up at first glance. The dragon's ability was described as god of creation, but its IQ was only equivalent to that of a puppy. The authenticity of the records left by magic shooters would be very high. The magic of the wind dragon had not dissipated for 4,000 years. Such a situation made him dazzled, and he couldn't wait to run to the Howling Wind Valley and observe for himself with magic eyes to see what was different about the magic of the wind dragon. After a while, his eyes flickered slightly, and he asked in a casual tone, "Mr. Glanny, I have read in the night novels that some novelists wrote that in addition to elements, metals, and gems, there is another category of dragons called the Sacred Dragon? I have also heard of the Sacred Dragon, but there is no record in the Dragon Spear Chronicles, the Dragon of Late Autumn. That's just the nonsense of the novelist. I don't like to read night novels. They are all fabricated, contrary to the truth, lies." When it came to night novels, Glanny was dismissive. "Can you talk about the Sacred Dragon? I have only seen one in the books, the Invisible Dragon. Those people made up the Sacred Dragon, saying that there are 5 kinds." Although Glanny despised the night novels, he obviously read a lot and was very knowledgeable. "The fairy dragon represents life. If you get it, you will have eternal life. It is very fake. The dusk dragon represents time. It can stop time. I don't know what this is for. The emerald dragon represents dreams. It can sneak into dreams. I have seen emerald. It is a kind of jade. What does it have to do with dragons?" As he spoke, he despised it. List listened very carefully. The invisible dragon represents space. It can produce space rings. It is the kind of ring that can hold many things. However, this is as ridiculous as my cup can hold an elephant. There is also the last one, the smoke dragon represents fate. In the night novels I have read, it is said that it is a cloud of smoke. I think the imagination is good. After talking about the 5 kinds of sacred dragons, Glanny concluded with contempt. No one has ever seen a sacred dragon with their own eyes, and no country has such a dragon. This is just made up by those who have never seen a dragon when they dream at night. There is nothing more to say. Let's continue talking about magic. Okay. Liszt responded absent-mindedly. However, in his mind, there was already a monstrous storm. The smoke dragon represents fate. A cloud of smoke. Chapter 157. 7 months ago. Liszt woke up from the darkness, understood his situation, and accepted the memory of his predecessor, knowing that he could see smoke when he was very young. But at that time, the smoke was very thin and could not be seen clearly. It was not until he crossed over and merged with this body that he could see the composition of the smoke. It turned out to be a task in the form of text. When he saw the content, he was really shocked. If this was a cheat, the smoke formed serpentines instead of Chinese characters. If this was not a cheat, the language style and the content of the task were familiar to him from Earth. He could only convince himself that the transmigrator did not move, but the cheat moved first. Then he accepted the existence of the smoke task and guessed that there must be a dark hand or conspiracy behind the scenes. However, this time, when he heard Glanny introduce the 5 kinds of sacred dragons, there was unexpectedly a smoke dragon that represented fate. This gave him a huge shock. Perhaps my cheat, this smoke task, is not some kind of conspiracy? There was no indication that the smoke task had any intention or drove him to carry out some kind of arrangement. From beginning to end, the smoke task was just a simple task. Then he would be rewarded with something that existed but was easily missed. This kind of reward. Thinking about it carefully, it had a strong color of fate. Whether it was passing by or hugging, it was a different trajectory of fate. Ordinary people could not change the trajectory of fate, or rather, their trajectory of fate was unknown and disorderly. But with the smoke task, Liszt's trajectory of fate had an extra choice. Glanny was still next to him, talking about magic. Liszt had entered his inner world. He lowered his head and looked at his body. Represents fate, a cloud of smoke. Could it be that there is a smoke dragon living in my body? Because of the smoke dragon's infection, I can get the right to choose my fate? It was different from Glanny's denial of the sacred dragon. He believed that sacred dragons absolutely existed. The invisible dragon ate 2 cows in front of him and left behind a space gem. This was an undeniable fact. Since the invisible dragon existed, why couldn't the smoke dragon exist? The fairy dragon, the dusky dragon, and the emerald dragon definitely existed. They might be extraordinary to the point of being incredible, but dragons and sprites were incredible creatures. So what if they were incredible? This was a world completely different from Earth, an extraordinary world full of magic. His thoughts continued to wander. He tried to find traces of the smoke dragon. It's not impossible for the smoke dragon to live in my body. After all, I often see smoke missions, but this smoke can only form serpentines. It has never formed the shape of a dragon, nor has it had any communication with me. It's very likely that I didn't obtain it, but was just affected by it. Ordinary animals can be infected by a dragon. Although humans have never had a dragon, it's hard to say if my predecessor was accidentally infected by a smoke dragon and became a smoke person when he was young. Thinking so, he didn't know whether he should feel lucky or regretful. Fortunately, it was rare for others to see a dragon, but he had come into contact with 2 dragons, and each of them left valuable gifts, the smoke that could control fate, and the gem space that had a unique world. Unfortunately, the intimate contact between the two dragons did not make him a dragon knight, nor did he gain the friendship of the dragons. Baron List. Baron List. Glanny's shout snapped List out of his daze. What? I'm introducing magic, are you listening carefully? Glanny was very unhappy. Learning magic requires concentration. On the road to pursuing the truth, although lonely and boring, the joy of gaining knowledge can make your mind go from emptiness to fullness. Sorry, I just want to know about magic, I don't want to learn it. List suppressed his messy thoughts and squeezed out a stylized smile. I didn't take a nap, so I'm a little listless. Let's end today's teaching here and continue tomorrow. Thomas, take Mr. Glanny around and visit Flower Town. Yes, Master. Thomas stretched out his hand in a gentlemanly manner. Mr. Glanny, this way please. Glanny glanced at List, showing a look of disgust. The truth is getting further and further away from you. After that, he strode out of the castle. After Glanny left, List stayed alone in the study, looking out of the window and pondering while listening to Blessed Curl's quack, quack sounds. Smoke Dragon. Smoke Mission. Fate. Many thoughts flashed back and forth. The smoke in front of him twisted and changed, but the text remained the same. Mission: the Flower Town's business district is gradually flourishing, but the workshop area has been idle for a long time. There are not enough workshops to support it. How can craftsmen be wasted on cutting down trees and farming? Please build 3 new workshops to increase the prosperity of the town. Reward: Chi Bottleneck. No matter how he tried to communicate with the smoke dragon behind the smoke, the content of the serpentines did not change. He could not communicate with the smoke dragon that existed or did not exist in his body. He could not change the smoke mission. The so-called choice of fate was just one more choice. It was like building a road in a scenic area. You could choose to build a straight road from the front door to the back door. The smoke mission would prompt you where there was a scenic spot. You could make a turn and enter the scenic spot. As for repairing a toilet or a parking lot, sorry, there was no such function. So now, there are 4 possibilities for what happened to me. First, he had close contact with the smoke dragon when he was a child. He was influenced by the smoke dragon and became a smoke dragon with the ability to choose part of fate. Second, the smoke dragon was hiding somewhere in his body and sleeping. The smoke formed a smoke mission, allowing List to steal part of his fate. Third, the smoke dragon might be just a young dragon with weak abilities, hiding and waiting for growth. Fourth, he thought too much. The smoke mission had nothing to do with the smoke dragon. It was just a golden finger benefit for a transmigrator. 1, 2, 3, 4 scenarios were all possible, but there was too little information to tell which was more likely. He tried to recall the memories of his predecessor when he was a child, trying to find a node, the node where he had close contact with the smoke dragon. There was a great possibility that he had been in contact with the smoke dragon. From the beginning of my memory, my predecessor had not been to many places. Red Crab Island was one. He had only been around the Long Taro Castle, and the rest was in the Coral Island. He had been to all the cities of the Coral Island. Every year, he would go on vacation with the Count and stay in the castles of the cities for a few days. There were no waves. The ordinary life of the second son of an aristocrat had always been uneventful. Half an hour later, he gave up on recalling. He also gave up on pondering. Forget it, since I am here, I will take things as they come. If I am fated with the smoke dragon, one day, I will be honest. I will do what I have to do and let fate decide the rest. If it is really the smoke dragon that represents fate, I believe it is predestined. List stretched. Chapter 158. In the following 2 or 3 days, List's schedule was full. In the morning, he trained Dosen, supervised the workshop, and in the afternoon, he studied magic, mainly the magic that Glanny had mastered. This mage was proficient in fire and water magic, and had a slight understanding of wind and earth magic. He did not understand lightning, ice, or darkness magic at all. The difficulty of practicing magic is far greater than practicing qi. The steps of magic are meditation, model, rune, and release. Meditation, mobilize spiritual power to communicate magic. Model, mobilize the magic to form a bridge between the magic inside and outside the body. Rune, use the magic inside the body to repair the details of the bridge, and strengthen the channel for magic to enter and exit. Release, complete the bridge, strengthen the channel, and guide the spiritual power to release the magic. Every magic has a fixed model and rune, and it takes time to master. For example, I can instantly cast Fireball and Water Arrow, which means that after thousands of casts, the details of the magic are completely engraved in my body and brain, and then I can naturally release them. But for Earth Element Flying Rock and Wind Element Wind Blade, I have to spend time to continuously modify the model and add runes to successfully release them. I have mastered many kinds of magic that need to be kept secret, so I can only show you Fireball, Water Arrow, Flying Rock, and Wind Blade. Every mage is a forger of magic equipment. In fact, the reason is very simple. Creating magic equipment is to carve a casting model. The core material itself can be seen as a rough casting model, and the supplementary materials are the runes to make up for the model. Also, the materials on World of Warcraft are very good sources of runes. Your flying dust dog is very extraordinary. I dare to bet that if I kill it and add it to the Black Pearl, I can even create an excellent magic equipment comparable to Little Elf Soldier. Glanny's eyes lit up as he said this. Little Elf Soldier was more precious than gemstone weapons. As the name suggests, Little Elf Soldier was a weapon made from little elves. When the blood of little elves soaked the weapon, it could give the weapon magical power. Although the major kingdoms had enacted laws to prohibit the killing of little elves were used to make weapons. After all, some little elves were not very useful for agricultural production. Don't mention things like little elf soldiers anymore. List abhorred this. Elves were beautiful things and should not be treated like this. Also, don't have any ideas about Dosen. Otherwise, I don't mind letting Dosen have intimate contact with you. Glanny squinted at List, his eyes filled with contempt. Perhaps thinking that List was very hypocritical, many nobles said that it was forbidden to kill elves, but secretly used useless elves to forge elven weapons, not only small elven soldiers, but also large elven soldiers, and even dragon elven soldiers. He licked his lips. You mean, you're willing to let me study that flying dust dog, Dosen? Glanny, I advise you not to think like that. Dosen is very dangerous. World of Warcraft is dangerous. It is particularly dangerous. List faintly warned. After the work was done, if the other party still did not give up, he did not mind letting Dosen freely play. Let's talk about the Black Pearl first. I hope that you can design a control device during the manufacturing process so that it can be switched on and off freely. If the Black Pearl had been suppressing the storm, it was obvious that it would not be possible to rely on the ores alone. Usually, when there was no big storm, the effect of the Black Pearl would be sealed, and when there was a storm, the seal would be lifted. Glanny thought for a moment. No problem, it's very simple. I already have enough ideas to make a top-quality magic equipment. In fact, I can't wait. If you give me another Dosen, the Black Pearl will be even better. After going around in circles, he returned to the topic. List picked up the cold drink on the table and ignored him. Glanny waited for a moment, and seeing the awkward silence, he said again. I saw a wall over at the castle, and inside it is also a flying dust dog. It can also be used. Impossible. Then, what about the chirping World of Warcraft? It should be a winged peregrine falcon, it can barely be tried. Blessed curls? List's refusal was on the tip of his tongue when he suddenly stopped. Blessed Curls did not know how to train it, and previously planned to train on an empty stomach. But after all, it was a bird. If he let it go, it would immediately fly away, so this method would not work. Since he couldn't find a falconer, Blessed Curls could only stay in the castle and watch, and before it could learn Wind Blade, he could kill it and eat its meat. Do you know any falconers? You want to tame it? I picked this Wind Peregrine Falcon from an egg. It can recognize people, but it lacks training, it can't even release magic. It's best to kill it. With World of Warcraft materials as runes, it can better assist the Black Pearl in suppressing the storm. I want to know, do you know any falconers? Glanny was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. I know one, but I still suggest you kill it and use it as an auxiliary material for the Black Pearl. Under List's repeated questioning, he finally said the name of the falconer, Elksun Truth, another mage living in Coral City. He knew of the existence of the falconer. List was eager to invite the other party, so he forced the reluctant Glanny to write an invitation letter. The two mages knew each other. The fate of Blessed Curls has taken a turn for the better. He was in a good mood. All that was left was to see when Elksun Truth would come over. When the letter was sent, the crystal craftsman Brad came to Flower Town and cooperated with Glanny to carve the crystal lamps. On the same night, the fourth night of the workshop's construction, Gort rode to the castle and reported to List, "Sir, the workshop has been completed." "Very good, it took 4 days to complete, exceeding expectations." "Advisor Gort, according to what I said, the serfs who work will be paid 3 times the salary." "As you wish. Do you want to inspect the workshop in person?" "No need." List didn't have time to inspect, he had already begun to call for the smoke mission. Mission completed, reward, Chi bottleneck. No matter how many candles are lit, the swaying flame will hurt the eyes. Since you are used to staying up late, you need to take care of yourself. Find a new stable light source, please install 10 crystal lamps for the castle. Reward, a variant type of thorns. The mission was completed, and a new mission appeared. It was the chain mission he was looking forward to. Variant thorns again, it seems that I was very prescient not to cut off the fast-growing thorns. List's mouth curved. Every time he completed the Thorns Worm chain mission, it increased the probability of the Thorns Worm evolving into a sprite. 10 crystal lamps, purely a welfare mission. I have to go back and urge Glanny and Brad to complete the crystal lamps as soon as possible. Immediately. List's attention shifted to himself. When will the Chi bottleneck come? I don't seem to have touched the bottleneck yet. The Chi in my body is still growing slowly. After a moment, he called the butler Carter. "Mr. Carter, for tonight's supper, let Mrs. Abby cook a batch of World of Warcraft steak, I am a little hungry." Chapter 159. He didn't know if it was because he ate too much World of Warcraft meat at once. He was holding on. At night, he tossed and turned but couldn't sleep. In the corner of the second floor, from time to time, Blessed Curls' quacking sounds could be heard, adding to his irritation. Usually, he didn't fall asleep, but at most, he could fall asleep after turning over. Tonight, he was very excited. It's only been more than half a year, and I'm going to touch the Chi bottleneck. It feels a little too fast. He was thinking. Thinking about why he could shorten the training time. In terms of the total amount of Chi in his body, he was now definitely not less than Marcus. With good food and good bloodline, there was no reason for him to be worse than Marcus, who was born a civilian. Chi training was related to nutrition, but the noble family's genes were constantly optimized, and they were indeed better than civilians in all aspects. When List was a child, before the age of 10, he was very popular with the Count because of his appearance. Even if he had a stepmother, there was never a shortage of food and clothing. After the age of 10, the Count gradually became disappointed with him. The treatment might be a little worse, but he would never be abused. Therefore, since he was a child, his body's foundation was very solid, but he lacked a little understanding, so he couldn't break through the primary chi before adulthood. When he crossed over, his body and soul merged, and he broke through in one fell swoop, becoming an Earth Knight. In another half a year, he would be promoted to an elite Earth Knight. Speaking of which, it's quite natural. Good foundation, high understanding, good food, fast training speed is normal. But he always felt that his training speed was too fast. There must be some aspect that he had neglected. In a flash, a thought flashed through his mind: is it because of the smoke dragon? I am affected by the smoke dragon? But soon he denied it. It shouldn't be. The predecessor had smoke missions when he was a child, and I didn't see how fast his training was. Even Earth Knight couldn't break through. So, what are the other reasons for the promotion? World of Warcraft meat? He had eaten a lot of World of Warcraft meat, especially recently. He had been eating World of Warcraft meat for every meal. If it wasn't for his young body's fast metabolism, he would have had a nosebleed. Levis's diet is definitely not worse than mine. He only entered the elite sequence 2 years ago at the age of 20. Ulvera's food isn't bad either. She freeloads all day long in the castle, but she still hasn't become an elite. On the contrary, Lytton is only 12 years old this year, but Madame Marie has been bragging everywhere that her son is going to break through to become an Earth Knight. If it's true, this talent is stronger than Levis's, and maybe only a little bit worse than mine. No wonder half of Tulip Castle's resources are given to him. His thoughts were a little jumpy, and various things about the Tulip Castle surfaced in his mind. When he had just transmigrated, he couldn't wait to not have any contact with the Tulip Castle to avoid embarrassment. As time passed, he became more and more integrated into List's identity. The position of Tulip Castle in his mind quietly changed. He began to care about the Tulip Castle and regarded himself as a member of the Tulip family. Or rather, in his heart, it wasn't that he didn't have the ambition to enter the Tulip Castle. How could his own development be compared to inheriting the family's property? I'm afraid that in the Earl's heart, Lytton is the most optimistic. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to give half of the resources to cultivate Levis to Lytton. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Madame Marie's pillow talk is, it won't be able to shake him. This Earl who fought and killed on the battlefield isn't just listening. The Earl's foundation of the Tulip family was founded by Lee William with a spear and a sword. He is in the prime of his life. The Sky Knight's chi is at its peak. It's not that he doesn't have the thought of going further. Every year, the Grand Duke's development order is never absent. List recalled his contact with Lee William. The other party's boundless chi gave people a feeling of incomparable sharpness. The Earl's chi was water-attributed. Generally, water-attributed chi had a gentle and inclusive feeling. However, his water-attributed chi was sharp. There was no doubt that it was influenced by his character. Take List for example. His chi was fire-attributed. It should have been restless and fanatical. However, he gave people a feeling of gentleness and mellowness like a spring breeze. This was the influence of his character. He wasn't even willing to go to the battlefield. He only knew how to hole up in the flower town and farm, 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 and farm. How violent could he be? The predecessor didn't like Marie and Lytton, the mother and son. Therefore, he soon stopped thinking about them. He thought of his sister, Ulvera. She was a 19-year-old girl with a somewhat Chinibu temperament. Her talent wasn't weak. She broke through to become an Earth Knight before reaching adulthood. Now that 3 or 4 years had passed, she still hadn't become an elite. This was related to a woman's physical fitness. The cultivation of a female knight was generally weaker than that of a male knight. It was said that there had never been a female dragon knight in this world. Ulvera and Lytton are not comparable. According to Levis's situation, I will be a big shock when I enter the elite list. He boasted that he was a genius, a 20-year-old elite. But what is he in front of me? A 16-year-old elite, even in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, is not common. He didn't think that the chi bottleneck was forcibly raised by the smoke mission. The reward was just a bridge. He touched the chi bottleneck because he had already accumulated enough. In addition to me being a genius, there must be other factors. Lying on the bed, List turned left and right. He racked his brains until the latter half of the night. He had another epiphany. Could it be because of the milk? 3 glasses of milk in the morning, noon, and evening, as well as a glass of milk for supper. 4 glasses of milk a day, plus various dairy products, it is nutritious. Previously, he thought that the flower town's pleasant climate made the cow's milk so delicious. But obviously, this was just his wishful thinking. Even if the climate was pleasant, the milk would not continuously improve its taste. After all, it was not the first time the cows had produced milk. The dairy farm had raised cows for more than 10 years, so the quality of the milk should have been discovered long ago. When Glanny mentioned the smoke dragon during the day, it made him think of many things. The invisible dragon caused a ruckus on the dairy farm, and its dragon might spread. Is it possible that it infected the cows? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. The taste of the milk has been improving. What does this mean? It means that the bloodline of this batch of cows is changing. They are probably already dragon-type cows. Milk Flower, Milk Yellow, and Milk Black were all pregnant. The improved taste of the milk they produced indicated that their bloodline had improved. Perhaps as ordinary cows, their aptitudes were limited and they could not infect dragon-type cows. However, their pregnant calves were very likely to inherit dragon bloodline and become genuine dragon-type cows. He simply sat up. His mood surged. Dragon-type cows sounded very rare and extremely valuable. Starting tomorrow, I will focus on the dairy farm to provide the cows with abundant pasture. In particular, the 3 pregnant cows must be taken care of so that their calves can give birth smoothly. He could not sleep. He forced himself to calm down and began to cultivate qi. The cells in his limbs and bones produced qi in a steady stream and converged in his meridians. Maintaining this state of cultivation, he cultivated all the way until the next morning. When the sun rose, the first ray of sunlight shone in. List abruptly opened his eyes. At this moment, he felt the qi surging in his meridians in his body, producing a feeling of fullness. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.